Good evening. It's 6:30. Members of council are assembled when you're ready to begin.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Saugeen Shores Council for February the 23rd, 2026. Welcome all members and everyone in the gallery and everyone watching by the live stream. We're glad everybody's here. Second item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and Councillor Halpin has that this evening.
We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands in the treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand that this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we're privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation. We acknowledge the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing, along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Thank you very much. Third item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, my item is on two of the items on the agenda. 9.2, short-term rental licensing program background study. And then also that same issue is mentioned in item 9.1, page 46 of the town's annual report. In case there are any questions resulting from this report. My conflict is that I own a cottage in Southampton, which I rent on a short-term basis.
Thank you. Any further disclosures at this time? Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. No additions, deletions, or amendments. So that moves us on to the minutes. And we do have the regular council minutes of February 9th, 2026. The resolution is that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of February 9th, 2026 as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Halpin. Questions or comments to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. All right, so now we're on to the open forum. We do have one open forum request this evening. Just remind our open forum delegate that council's allotted 3 minutes for open forum. So whenever you're ready, Mr. John Willits, here to speak to us about Sister City Initiative. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Willits.
That works. Great. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm speaking today, I think it's item 15.2, an authorization of the Memorandum of Understanding with Sister City Partnership between Saugeen Shores and Zonnebeck in Belgium. Zonnebeck, but particularly Passchendaele, is a national symbol. It's a cornerstone of our shared history, birth of our nation, really. The linking of our communities doesn't just honor that legacy, but through an active partnership like this, it strengthens our identity and raises our profile at home and internationally. This partnership offers opportunities for tourism, cultural exchanges, and global visibility. It creates a platform for shared exhibits, artist dialogue, student and business will gain international connections and enrich both communities. And with the resolution or the acceptance of this recommendation from council, and thanks to Dave Myatt, I do look forward to continue working with the town and Zonnebeck and bringing this project to life. In these times of global uncertainty and building international connections is vital. And it's key to fostering peace, understanding, and a stronger, more united future for all of us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so now that's the end of our open forum. It moves on to delegations. We have one delegation this evening. I'll just remind our delegates that council's allotted 10 minutes for delegations. And so our one delegation is from Saugeen Shores Minor Hockey, and it is being presented by Becky Smith and Matt Allen. So Ms. Smith, Mr. Allen, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Charbonneau, councilors and staff. My name is Becky Smith. I'm here tonight on behalf of Saugeen Shores Minor Hockey Association. I've been a member of the board for the last 2 years as the OMHA registrar. I have 2 children who play for the Storm, and I'm joined by many other members of the executive here tonight. We are here tonight for a few reasons. One, to demonstrate the need and opportunity for a third ice pad in Saugeen Shores, and also to provide accurate information to council to help you understand the current state of affairs. Do I need to use this to advance the slides? No? Oh, sorry. Doesn't seem to be working.
If you just press next, it doesn't work. If not, these folks
No.
up here can advance them for you. I suspect, can we help, Ms. Smith?
Okay.
If you
thank
just say
you.
next slide, yeah.
Next slide, okay. So the arena sport field needs assessment came to council in October of last year. All of the user groups have come together and we've had a few meetings now because we feel like the report was not an accurate representation of what's happening in Saugeen Shores. And there's really 3 areas where we have some concerns. One, the context in the report about hockey declining in Canada is not an accurate reflection of what's happening here in our community. There are many user groups that were not considered in the report, which significantly understates the number of users we have here. And the return to ice by minor hockey was overstated. Next slide, please. So Saugeen Shores Minor Hockey, we are the largest minor hockey program in the Tri-County area. We've seen over 40% growth in the last 5 years. The participation in girls hockey has more than tripled over the last 10 to 11 years. In 2015, we had 65 girls playing hockey in Saugeen Shores, and this year we have 190 girls. I also want to talk a little bit about the extraordinary talent here that we have among our girls rep teams. Our U11 girls are both ranked. We have 2 rep teams in the U11 division, a B and a C team, and both of those 2 teams are ranked among the top 5 in Ontario. Last year, the U11C team won the All-Ontario Championship. Every year, we have kids that move here with their families in the hope to continue to play hockey. And we know if Bruce C is built, this will bring even more families to the area with children who want to play hockey. Next slide, please. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into the girls hockey program. Our girls hockey is growing rapidly across Ontario, and Saugeen Shores is no exception. However, our current ice availability limits our capacity to retain and grow the girls program. So the graph that you see there is the number of girls that have left our association over the last 6 years to play hockey in our neighboring communities. This is almost always because we cannot offer them enough ice to continue to develop. Over the last 6 seasons, 75 girls have left Saugeen Shores to play hockey elsewhere. Just this season alone, we have lost 32 girls to neighboring communities. Most are leaving to play a higher level of hockey that we just simply can't offer here because we don't have the ice time. And I'll give you an example. Last year or this year, we lost 3 girls to the U13 team in Owen Sound. They're currently on the ice 4 to 5 days a week. We can only offer our girls 2 ice times a week. And without additional ice, this trend will continue, and we really need to keep our homegrown talent here in Saugeen Shores. Next slide, please. So this slide outlines what happens if arena capacity is not expanded. Next season, we will be forced to turn away 20 to 40 kids, many of whom already live here and have played hockey in Saugeen Shores. And that is not because of a lack of interest or volunteers. It is simply because there is no ice available to support program growth. We are also seeing the strongest demand in our younger age divisions. Right now, we have the demand to grow programs like our U5 program. We could double the capacity of that program, but we just simply don't have enough ice. Without additional ice, we are forced to make difficult choices. We either keep roster sizes at a level that supports proper development, or we overload teams just to accommodate demand. When rosters grow too large, kids receive significantly less ice time during games, sometimes nearly half, and that directly impacts their ability to develop gameplay skills and confidence. And without a third ice pad, we're not just limiting growth, but we're actively holding our kids back. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend too long on this slide, but this is just for the 2025-2026 season. I think we just want to be very clear. We are using 100% of our allocated ice. Current capacity is fully saturated. I think we returned less than 1% of our ice this year, and it was on Halloween when kids really don't want to be at the rink. They want to be out trick-or-treating, which is understandable. Next slide, please. So in the report, the needs assessment report, there was a line in there that said that we could be at 1,400 participants by 2036. That's 10 years from now. So when these user groups have come together, we did a review of the actual participation today, and we found that we are already over 1,500 users. Those users span many groups, from our Minor Hockey Association, the Grey Bruce Bulls, which now is our boys rep teams, the figure skating group, multiple adult men's and women's leagues, senior teams, and even our high school varsity boys and girls teams. Some who currently have no home practice ice available at all. These are not projected users. These are active participants already competing for limited ice. So the key takeaway here is that demand has been significantly underestimated. We are not planning for future growth. We are already behind. Updating the numbers with real participation data is critical so that council can make informed decision based on today's reality. Next slide, please. We've also had a few, I know our president, Matt Allen, spoke to the Highlanders. We have many kids in Saugeen Shores playing for the AAA Highlanders. Their home ice is in Chesley. But given the significant amount of kids that are in that organization, they have expressed interest in hosting some home games here. We'll give them more visibility in Saugeen Shores and allow some of those Saugeen Shores kids to play home games. We also have our girls AA at a Saugeen Maitland. There's a number of girls from Saugeen Shores that play on that team. I think the U13 AA team has 4 or 5 girls from Saugeen Shores on that team. There's mentioned a few other groups in there that would like to have ice in Saugeen Shores. I want to expand a little bit more on the last point around youth development opportunities. Because we don't have enough ice, our young players have very limited access to development opportunities like power skating and skills training. Last season, my daughter here, Lexi, most of her team, we were driving to Owen Sound every Wednesday night all winter long for power skating. Every night, Kim Burns has one of the rinks at the Julie MacArthur Center booked from 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock. And when you look around that arena, there's a significant portion of kids on that ice from our community. While we're there, we're also buying groceries, grabbing food after we leave the arena, and shopping, meaning our lack of ice isn't just holding back player development, it's pushing both opportunity and everyday spending out of our town, even though we have qualified instructors ready to deliver these programs right here if ice was available. Next slide, please. Right now, we are only able to host one tournament per season, our annual Girls Silver Stick Tournament. It's in the middle of December. It brings 36 teams to Saugeen Shores. This event fills hotels, restaurants, and local businesses, but it's the only opportunity we have because we simply do not have the ice capacity to host more. And as a tourism-based community, January and February are some of our slowest months. A third ice pad would allow us to host multiple winter tournaments, creating consistent sport tourism during the off-season. That means more hotel stays, more meals, more fuel purchases, more retail spending, and a meaningful economic boost for local businesses when they need it the most. I have 2 kids in hockey, and this year my husband and I sat down to determine how much we are spending annually on hockey. And this is probably modest for some families, because some families have 3 or 4 kids in hockey. And it was somewhere between $12,000 to $15,000 a year that we're spending on hockey. Now, some of that stays locally. Gourds, we spend a lot at Gourds, sharpening skates, spend some at Goat, and our local ice or minor hockey fees. But most of those dollars are leaving our community through out-of-town tournaments, travel, hotels. Hockey tournaments are a proven economic driver in the wintertime. And without enough ice to host them, we are missing a significant opportunity to keep those dollars here on Saugeen Shores and attract that type of activity to our community. A third ice pad would allow us to capture more of that locally. Next slide, please. Now this slide is really about what Saugeen Shores can become with a third ice pad. We have the location, the population growth, the passion to be a true destination hockey center for our region. With additional ice, we can retain our talented local athletes, especially our female players, by giving them development opportunities right here at home instead of forcing them to leave our community. A third ice pad would allow us to be the permanent home of women's hockey, high-performance youth development, home for our Grey Bruce Bulls and our boys hockey rep teams. And it would also open the door to consistent winter tournaments and figure skating competition, bringing families, visitors, and economic activity to Saugeen Shores during months when the community is traditionally quiet. This isn't just about adding ice, it's about unlocking the full potential of our community as a year-round sport and tourism hub. It supports our youth, it strengthens our local economy, and it positions Saugeen Shores for long-term growth. Next slide, please. So this final slide is really about partnership. There is a passionate, committed group of ice users in this community, many of whom are here tonight. And we feel that through our lived experience, what it actually looks like on the ice week to week, it was not fully captured in the recent needs assessment. So our request is simple. Recognize that our arenas are at capacity. Involve user groups meaningfully in the future ice allocation policy when they are developed, and begin planning now for a third ice pad. We believe that this can be done collaboratively and in a way that serves the long-term interests of Saugeen Shores. We want to work together with council and staff to turn this shared vision into reality for our kids and our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me just say, you're brave to do the math on how much it costs to have your kids in hockey. That's math that my wife and I never try to do. All right, are there questions or comments from the members? Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Becky, for your presentation and all the figures and calculations that go into that. It's quite astounding. And, you know, I'm sure that every council member around this table, if we could wave a wand right now and put a third ice pad in this community, we would do it. We understand the need. It's clear to everybody. Your numbers of how much money you spend to go out of town are pretty striking too. And it's just a matter of the fact that the paint isn't hardly dry on our new Aquatics and Wellness Center, and then we're looking at the next project. But I would urge staff to come back with or somebody to come back with a comprehensive estimate of what it would take, whether we have the borrowing capacity, how we could raise community funds to back something like this, and I would really love to be able to make it happen. So thanks very much, and we'll do it everything we can. Oh, and I'm glad to see that all your user groups are represented here too. I see figure skating came in the room while you were talking too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Councilor Stack.
So thank you for the presentation. I think, you know, I've been a big supporter of the all-season ice. I grew up in a community far from here, and ice time was much more readily available. It feels like it was a million years ago now, so population growth is probably different. Just a couple of things. I think I share Councillor Mayette's interest in seeing a comprehensive plan for this. I think, as he's already indicated, the challenge is the cost when we've just built the AWC and we've invested quite a bit in rec. I think two things what would be valuable for us is a commitment from the various user groups if we were to move down this path to support fundraising, because I think that's something we saw with the other user groups in the AWC. The other thing I just want to point, and we had someone come here a few weeks ago to talk about ice time, and I'll just be candid, and I think my view on this won't surprise a few of the folks who know me in the room. I'm a little surprised by the number of girls we're turning away to men we're turning away. So perhaps one of the things we should talk about, if we're going to prioritize rec in particular for kids, that we prioritize the girls that are playing over some of the adult leagues, men and women, because I'm seeing here 128 men, 12 turned away, 190 girls, 32 turned away. So there's.
It's not that they're turned away. Sorry to interrupt you.
Just let the councilor's got the floor, and then
Happy to be corrected. I'm just repeating what was said to me in this presentation. So if I'm incorrect, like, happy to have that discussion. But I think when I look at this and I see some of the numbers that you've articulated in your presentation, it does concern me that it does appear, and this is the second time the subject's come up, where we seem to be prioritizing boys and men over girls and access to ice. And the only reason I'm saying that is because the consequence of ice time to girls seems to be a through line through the presentation. So if I'm wrong, if I misunderstood, like happy to be correct, I think we can allow that question. But I just encourage the folks in this room, if that's going to be the discussion here, we're talking about youth in particular, I'd like to make sure, and maybe you're just going to clarify for me, that access is equitable for you, for the percentage of users. So if we're going to talk about access, it should be, girls should have equal access to the ice as the boys relative to their numbers. That's all happy to be corrected. I'd love to be corrected on that one.
Ms. Smith, you have a comment?
So I think with what we're seeing right now is with girls and boys, everybody gets about 2 ice times a week. What happens when these girls now, and last year there was a restructuring with the boys rep teams. So the Grey Bruce Bulls now has all of our boys rep teams that have been amalgamated with Erin Eldersley in the township of Chatsworth. So that's a separate organization now, the Grey Bruce Bulls. The girls are separate now. Like the girls and the boys programs are a little bit different. The girls are still under the umbrella of Saugeen Shores Minor Hockey. And what happens when these girls get to be about U13 is that they want more ice because they want to continue to develop, and we simply can't offer that for them. Own Sound is giving them 4 to 5 ice times a week. We can't give that to them.
Councillor Stack.
Okay, so just to clarify, it's not that 32 girls have left neighboring centers because of lack of ice time. It's a restructuring of the.
No, sorry.
Go ahead,
Sorry
please.
if I'm not being
Go ahead,
clear.
Ms. Smith.
The restructuring was just on the boys' side. So our girls are leaving to seek higher opportunities. So could we offer an A center here for girls? Absolutely, but we don't have the ice to do that.
Thank you. Further comments from members or questions? Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation, Becky. It was very well documented, and I also have some concerns about what was written in the Monteith Brown report. I had some concerns about the ball numbers, and I had some concerns about the ice numbers too, and that when they talk about 85% usage, I don't know where that comes from. I keep hearing from my hockey using your ice time 100% of the time, maybe 1% cancel for Christmas and other holidays, which is understandable. You know, I don't spend a lot of years in Owen Sound, and I remember they had 2 ice surfaces. I was a recreation director over there, and they brought in operating at full capacity, and they brought in a 3rd ice pad, and guess what? It's operating at full capacity. So I think it wouldn't be any different here. In that a 3rd ice pad, you would fill 70 hours easily, in my view. You know what really concerns me is 75 girls having left Saugeen Shores to play competitive hockey elsewhere. That really concerns me. And one of the other things that really concerns me is that there's no ice time for weekend tournaments. You've got your silver stick, but what about a figure skating show, a carnival? What about other other ice events that we just don't have the ice time for? I heard arguments that summer ice would never go over here in Saugeen Shores. Janet Dawson's here tonight. She proved us wrong, didn't she? That our summer ice, I think our director of community services would attest to. The summer ice was very successful, 2-year pilot, and I hope the report comes back saying what a great move that was. But there was a lot of question whether or not we could fill that ice. But I think groups proved that we could fill the ice, and I'm concerned that we don't have as big a women's hockey program as we should have because we don't have the ice time to do it. I'm concerned that there's not enough ice time for the Grey Bruce Bulls. I think it's a great organization. I'm concerned that you talked about the figure skating carnivals, but tournaments, economic spinoff. Look what Lamont Sports Park, 10 tournaments and filled 2,000 motel rooms in Kincard and Saugeen Shores and Owen Sound. 2,000 motel room units over those 10 weekends. So, fill 2,000 rooms in the wintertime. How do you think the motel operators during the shoulder season would feel if we fill weekend after weekend after weekend, fill motel rooms and restaurants and gas stations? So I think there's a lot of benefits to it. You're hitting us at a time where we just finished a $50 million wellness center, and we had Lamont Sports Park, $12 million, and we got a fire hall, $7-8 million that's being built in 2 years. We got Southampton Town Hall, 8 to 10 million. So you're coming at a time where these things will all just are happening, right? Or have happened or about to happen. And you add another 20 million, it is a lot of money, but I like to think somehow, you know, we could make it work. We tend to, this council tends to find ways to move ahead with good projects. And I think this one here is a really, really good project. And, but it's on the heels of us spending a whole lot of money in other areas, that's for sure. What I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, is that, you know, yeah, Becky, your presentation, your numbers are to me, very good numbers, accurate numbers that I like. And Mr. Mayor, I really like to see our staff, all the user groups, Becky, not just minor hockey, but figure skating and bulls hockey, all the user groups of ice, sit down with staff
Mhm.
and go over that Montes report and compare it to what you have in your numbers, because there's something wrong here. Something's just not right. And we live in a bubble. That Montes Brown report, you know, where we'll hit 1,400 by 2036, we're at 1,500 already. The report just come off in October. So we live in a bubble here, and when the numbers across Canada may be down a little bit, we have Bruce Power, we have a nuclear plant here, a lot of young families, and numbers I think are just going to continue to grow, but from what I'm seeing from your report. So I think those numbers need to be challenged. I like to see all the user groups, Mr. Mayor, sit down with staff, go over what you're saying, what staff are saying via the Montes report, like you're doing with the minor ball groups. I think that's good discussion that Kristen's having with and staff with the ball groups about the ball diamond usage. So, anyways, you know, I'm very supportive. 20 million is a lot of money. If we build the full, you know, if we build a practice rink with a little bit of seating, it's probably going to be $20 million again. But I found in this community, you know, I've heard other people say, well, if we build no third ice surface, what about Terre and Chesley and Bay? They're going to close down. I don't think they will. I really don't think they will. I think that hockey in Gray and Bruce counties, we live in a bit of a bubble here, where numbers are higher than other areas. So, anyways, that'd be my recommendation with the staff report come back. Councillor Stacks mentioned about and Councillor Matt about costing. How we could finance it. I think Councillor Matt's a good point. Like, how can we finance it? We'd have to see. So that'd be my recommendation, that we send them back to staff to meet and then come back with a staff report, provide a little more information for us.
Okay, thank you. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Becky, that was fabulous. The audio broke up a bit. I'll just let you know that in the council chambers, but I was able to follow along with the slides and the bits and pieces that I heard. Important if some kind of report is coming back, that it be very helpful in terms of costing. $20 million, I do feel that there would be resistance in the community to another big spend on recreation right now. There may be potential for a different kind of structure. You know, that the space is there, so you know some of the prep costs maybe, you know, can already be factored in there because, you know, the space is there, there's parking available, that sort of thing. But a $20 million price tag is going to be a hard pill to swallow for anybody on council without a real good plan about how user groups can help make that happen. And I don't think that that's an impossibility. I just think that we need to really think of that as a reality and get creative on what actually would service and take care of, you know, this need for extra practice time and that sort of thing without, as I said a couple of weeks ago, you know, all the bells and whistles being in there, because we really can't afford that. But this was a great presentation, and anybody who's been at the rink, you know, sees wonderful volunteers out on the ice. So Becky's comments about, you know, having the availability of coaches and trainers and people who could lead power skating. I truly believe that. I see people at both the Coliseum and the Plex that these folks have day jobs, their moms and dads and other people that they show up for kids at the rink. So definitely there's an opportunity here, but the price tag, there's got to be a realistic way to manage this. Otherwise, I do feel that taxpayers will give us a hard time about it. But thanks again for the presentation, Becky. Again, it was very specific and really right on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin, and then Davinsky.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and through you. That was a great presentation, and I still play pickup hockey. I'm on the third line, but I still play. I play in Paisley, and I can say that the Paisley rink has basically three Port Elgin or four Port Elgin's men teams playing there on the weekend. I just want to say, like we've made historic investments in recreation, and 50 million to the Aquatic and Wellness Center, 12 million on Lamont Sport Park. We put about $1 million into each arena over the last couple of years, doing upgrades and everything as well. And plus the money going into North Shore Park and Jubilee Park for recreation, and Hollywell Field for new soccer. And one thing I want to mention is I heard loud and clear from the taxpayers that, they were weary of their taxes going up 25% over 5 years, and people are weary of their taxes going up. So this is the line that council has to walk. And we have an aggressive 10-year plan budget ahead of us, which includes a new fire hall. So yeah, if I could wave a wand and have a third ice pad here, I'd do this in a minute. But fellow councillors, we also need to live within our means. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, thank you, Becky, for your presentation. I think we're all saying the same thing, and I think the underlying thought is the numbers don't appear to be lying, and so we do have an issue, but we need the user groups, the user people to step up to do some fundraising. This is not going to fly if there isn't fundraising by the user groups. Will it fly next year, the year after? Maybe not. It may take a few years. As a matter of fact, if I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, to ask this question. Did we not talk about this during the budget talks about a third ice pad? And in our 10-year plan, it said where we might consider it?
Yeah, at present, it sits in 2034 in our 10-year capital plan.
2034. So 2034 it sounds like a million years away. I know that, okay? Could it, by chance, with the help of the users, and again, I'm throwing it out to whoever is listening, could that be moved up by 2 years, by 3 years, so that it happens at 2031 instead of 2034? Is that a possibility? And I guess I'm asking that through you to Becky.
Have any response, Ms. Smith?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
I
Is
think
it a possibility to move it up?
It was a one-shot deal. That's it. No, I said, if this, we have it in our 10-year capital budget plan at 2034. If that could be moved up to say 2031, it would have to be done with the user group's help. They would have to be supplying most of the money, as they did with Lamont Park, as they did with the AWC. We had some fine check presentations come in. I agree that the taxpayer is a little weary. We knew that going into the budget. But could you see that happening where there would be enough money to start the process 3 years early. I'm really putting you on the spot. I don't mean to, but yeah, can you see the groups helping out here?
Absolutely. I think as a result of that report, the user groups have come together already and I mean, it's a passionate group of people and we are dedicated to making this happen. I know that a group did that for the Plex and I think we have more youth, more young coaches that want to see this happen in our community. We've got parents in Saugeen Shores driving to Ayton 2 or 3 times a week for practice. And they've got 2 or 3 kids in hockey. So to have another ice pad here would be incredible. And we have the need for it now. If we had one next year, we could probably fill the ice time.
But we know through you, Mr. Mayor, we know that's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, if we could move it up by 3 years, I suggest to you that that's when it would start, 2031. And then it would take yet another year before it was ready. And maybe longer. I don't know. But in any event, it could be 2032. But there's nothing unless we see the people that are using this user pay. Okay,
Mhm.
not all user pay, but it's user pay. Do you really want it? Well, show us how you really want it. The same as we did with the other recreational areas. So I too would like to wave that magic wand, and if I could, I'd make a lot of money myself as well. But there has to be the user taking part, and that to be shown way ahead of time. So that if we could move it all of a sudden to 2031, we know that between now and 2030 or 31. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Becky.
Yeah, thank you. So we do have to carry on here. I have a long agenda ahead of us, but I did want to say thank you very much for coming in tonight and giving us that presentation. The good news is as I look at your requests on the last slide, I think we can pretty well do all of those things. I think most members of council at least have recognized the numbers you've given in terms of our capacity, re-examining the needs assessment. We're doing that, and I think staff would be very happy to work with you. I'm certainly they will reach out to you and minor hockey and all of our ice user groups to work with you on that. Meaningful involvement in our ice allocation policy. I think I see the director nodding to that. We'll definitely do that. And we are planning for a third ice pad. It's now in 2034. I know that's not where everybody wants it. I don't think anybody on council wants it out there. We need a plan to figure out how to get it sooner. We're pretty good at coming up with plans around here, and we'll work together with you guys and people across the community and find ways to get these facilities that we want and need for our community. So I think we're pretty aligned, frankly, with what you're asking for, and eager to keep working with minor hockey. And I'll just conclude by saying, since you're standing in front of me, thank you to you and to the whole board of minor hockey, a whole bunch of them here today. I personally have benefited a great deal because of your volunteerism. My 3 sons have had more than a decade of great hockey in Saugeen Shores because of you folks giving your time to make sure that happens. I know it's not an easy job all the time to be on the minor hockey executive, but it's a really critical job. So thank you so much for what you do. And thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move on in the agenda to reports of municipal officers. And the first one, 9.1, the 2025 Town of Saugeen Shores Annual Report and the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, as I smile, as I clear out the room. I'm pleased to present the Town of Saugeen Shores 2025 Annual Report, which tells the story of a year focused on turning plans into viable progress while staying true to the values and priorities set by council and our community. This report is an important checkpoint in the cycle of the town's business. It is a companion piece to the 2025 business plan, laying out the business plan's progress and summarizing what was accomplished throughout the year. As all of you know, the business plan outlines 4 key components: the major initiatives that move the municipality forward, division highlights, which improve how we serve our residents, capital highlights that build our community, and key performance indicators that establish a baseline in order to measure our future success. The 2025 business plan included 44 major initiatives, 90 division highlights, and 42 capital highlights.
This annual report reflects not just what we accomplished, but how we did it, guided by our strategic plan, values, and delivered through our strategic pillars. It demonstrates how the long-term planning, strong partnerships, and dedicated staff translate strategy into actions. The values that are identified in our strategic plan start with people-centered. In 2025, council and staff continue to place people at the center of our decision-making. We continue to expand public participation through our Engage Saugeen Shores platform and the community panel, giving residents more opportunities to shape priorities and strengthen trust through transparency. Internally, we invested in staff well-being through wellness programming, leadership development, and enhanced internal communications, recognizing that a supported workforce delivers better service to our community. Our value around inclusivity, council and staff continue to foster community where people feel welcomed, respected, and connected. A meaningful example this year was our commitment to the town's support of the 2025 Multicultural Day, which celebrated cultural diversity, unity, and the vibrant spirit of community in Saugeen Shores. This event created space for residents and visitors to come together, learn from one another, and recognize the many cultures that contribute to the social fabric of our community. With regard to transparency and service-focused, in 2025, the town introduced council's first 10-year operating plan alongside that capital plan we were just speaking of, strengthening the long-term financial and service planning of the town. Governance improvements, including a review of council governance framework and updated delegation policies, enhanced decision-making and organizational effectiveness. Service delivery was further strengthened through initiatives such as standardized lease agreements, enhanced legal services, improved emergency coordination through a universal closure policy, and continued investment in digital tools that support efficiency and consistency across the organization. And lastly, around the pillar of stewardship, it was supported through our energy efficiency improvements, trail and park enhancements that we heard about tonight, shoreline protection planning, and the continued work towards sustainable waste management, including the implementation of the provincial blue box transition, as well as our landfill optimization planning. When we look to the strategic pillars in the town of Saugeen Shores, we talk about meeting the needs of a growing community. And in 2025, council and staff focused on ensuring that infrastructure services and planning kept pace with the growth in our changing community. Significant progress was made on major infrastructure projects, including the High Street reconstruction in Southampton, Goderich Street resurfacing in Port Elgin, and continued advancement of water and wastewater master planning to support long-term capacity. These investments are essential to maintaining reliable services today while planning for responsible growth. Housing initiatives also moved forward with the launch of the Ready Build housing designs, progress on affordable housing partnerships that bring close to 170 affordable housing options closer to reality, and work towards innovative planning tools to increase housing options for residents at different stages in life. Together, these efforts support sustainable growth while protecting the character of Saugeen Shores. When we look to building the best municipal team, delivering high-quality municipal services depends on having that skilled, supported, and engaged workforce. In 2025, the town invested in staff development, leadership training, and organizational effectiveness through initiatives such as the expanded internal planning tools, wellness programming, supervisor and management training, and improved internal communications. The annual employee engagement survey provided a valuable insight, helping departments identify concrete actions to strengthen workplace culture. In building valued relationships, a key milestone in 2025 was the signing of the Friendship Accord with Saugeen First Nation, formalizing a partnership rooted in respect, collaboration, and mutual benefit. This agreement sets a foundation for continued work together in areas such as community building, tourism, economic development. The town also strengthened relationships with other municipalities, senior levels of government, and regional partners through advocacy efforts, healthcare partnerships, and participation in the broader initiatives such as the nuclear new build impact assessment work. These relationships help ensure Saugeen Shores' interests are represented while advancing solutions that benefit the broader region. And lastly, fostering a vibrant place to live and visit. Creating a community that people are proud to call home and excited to visit remains a central focus in 2025. The final construction of the Pride Aquatic and Wellness Center marked a major investment in recreation, health, and community connection. parks and public spaces were enhanced through projects like North Shore Park and Jubilee improvements. Further trail improvements and waterfront enhancements continue to support active lifestyles and accessible outdoor spaces for our residents and visitors alike. Downtown beautification and revitalization efforts, including our incredible new murals, cultural heritage planning, tourism initiatives, and community events further contribute to a sense of place that reflects Saugeen Shore's unique character and strengthens our year-round appeal. Looking ahead, the initiatives that I've mentioned are just a handful of the work that took place in 2025. I encourage everyone to take the time to review the full annual report and the projects that are shaping our community. The 2025 annual report shows a municipality that is planning thoughtfully, delivering responsibly, and listening carefully. And none of this work happens without the leadership of this council, the dedication of our staff across every department, and the ongoing involvement of our residents and community partners. On behalf of the organization, I thank you for your trust and collaboration. As we move forward in 2026 with our business plan and beyond, we will continue to build on this momentum, focusing on people, service excellence, and future-ready investments that support a thriving, resilient Saugeen Shores.
Thank you very much. So the resolution is that council receive the 2025 Town of Saugeen Shores Annual Report for information. Is there a mover and seconder for that resolution? The Vice Deputy Mayor and Councillor Grace. Questions or comments from the members? The Vice Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to pass on my thanks, Kara, to you and your staff. We have our management team is just really second to none. You people do a tremendous amount of work for us, good work, high quality workforce, and go beyond the call of duty on a regular basis. And we're very fortunate to have the high quality staff we do have, right from our snowplow operators to our office staff to our, I mean, right across the board. We have an amazing staff. And I was running through that 58 pages, and it kind of made me tired, just taking a look at all the work that's been done in 2025. But I take a look back when I came on council almost 12 years ago now with Councilor Mayette and Grace and our deputy mayor. But this is probably the finest report. It's really made me realize we're doing a whole lot of good stuff in our community. And so I just want to say thank you. The staff did a remarkable job, and just keep up the great work. Thank you all.
Thank you. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I too am just so impressed with the content of the report and the quality. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. There are so many wonderful things in this report to compliment, but I just wanted to mention a couple of things that are mentioned here. Our communications department, because as a member of both the environmental committee, which was in effect a year ago, and the ongoing work of the heritage committee, our communications department has been a great support. Like right now, they're doing a promotion on Heritage Week on social media, which is great. The AWC staffing, I'm just getting incredibly positive comments. Friends of mine who are quite elderly, who came in, did a tour, just can't stop talking about the wonderful person who spent time with them. And the launch was just remarkable. Our cybersecurity and training, just those statistics that in 2023, we had 215 attempted cyber attacks threats. In 2025, we had 2,124, 100% blocked. That's incredible. And it's so, it's so important, obviously, to us. I did have a question about the town subsidy. Now we're at 30 households supported through the town subsidy of the municipal housing allowance program that's administered by the county, but that we provide money for. I'm not sure who would answer this, but I guess I was wondering, how typical is this type of program? I'm sure this was explained to us at the time that it was launched, but is this a fairly routine program that we see in other municipalities?
The CAO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, and the mayor may be able to comment better than I can on on the program itself from the county's perspective. I would offer from our perspective that the $225,000 that Saugeen Shores contributes to provide for those 30 households is not being done by any other municipality other than Saugeen Shores.
It's certainly not being done by any other municipality in Bruce County. Beyond that, I don't know, but we're the only one in Bruce.
Well, that's something to be very proud of. Thanks.
Further comments or questions from the members? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
I just was waiting for it to go around, but I couldn't let the evening pass without thanking all our new staff at the Wellness Center Strides. Like I try to get in there 4 or 5 times a week and talking to them a lot, but pleasant. What I'm hearing from people is they're so friendly and they're smiling, and it's all about customer service, right? And they're treating people, you know, it just the way they're treating people is really good. And so whoever provides staff training, I don't know who it was, kudos to those people, because they've really they're pulling out all the stops to be friendly to people, and people see that. Yeah, and I've heard that from a lot of people, by the way, about how friendly the staff is. So thanks. It's they're doing a great job. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. This is a great report, and I hope the public will access it because this shows where your tax money went this year. And there are so many good stories out there, but I think this was a record year for road construction. And I know the figure was put together at one time was 11 kilometers or something of roads that were redone. And so a great year. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to the senior staff, and thank you for the report.
Thank you. Councillor Grace.
Sorry, one last thing. And this is kind of a funny story, but on snow removal, because we all know we have fantastic operations. And I passed this story on to Matt and Trevor. But friends of mine came up who live in Toronto over the recent long weekend, and they said that as they were preparing to go, they stopped in at a deli in downtown Toronto, and the person said, oh, what are you doing this weekend? They said, well, we're going to our place in Southampton. And the guy said, well, I hear that Southampton has wonderful snow removal. He had some friend who lives there, but I just thought, wow, okay, we really have a great province-wide reputation.
Our reputation precedes us. Are there further comments from members? I think the best thing about it's a great report, and always is, and it's a good thing we do every year. The best feature of it though is highlighting. You know, we have all the big ticket stuff we do, the Pride Center and all the big, you know, the roads projects, things everybody's talking about all the time, but sort of highlighting that day-to-day work that the staff is doing here on all the bits. You know, whether it's what 10.5 tons, I suspect, metric tons of waste received at the landfill, or whether it's all the, what was it, 10,000 some odd invoices processed. You know, this is the work. You know, if the 10,000 invoices don't get paid, the AWC doesn't run, right? And that's work that happens every year. It's built into the budget. It's been built into the budget since the dawn of time. But it's important to highlight it once a year. Remember to remind folks that these are all of the moving parts. A municipality is as an amalgamation of a lot of different businesses. Like it's not one business. It's dozens of different businesses all under one organization, and it takes a huge amount of horsepower to keep all of those wheels turning. And we have incredible folks up and down the organization who are turning those wheels. And so I, like Councillor Halpin said, you know, folks should open this report up, give it a read, see what your tax dollars do, what the civil servants in this municipal government do. It's a wide range of things, all of which touch everybody's life in one way or another. This stuff is the stuff that matters most in your life because it lets you make sure you can pull out your driveway in the morning and flush your toilet and do all those things, right? It's critical stuff. And this report really highlights it well. So thank you all for doing the work you do, putting it together. And of course, all the rest of the work you do, doing all the stuff that's in the report. So you've heard the recommendation. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? That is carried. All right, so now we're on to 9.2, short-term rental licensing program background study, and turn that over to the chief building official.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Tonight, I'm providing a brief introduction to the short-term rental licensing background study prepared to support council's ongoing discussion on regulating short-term rentals in Saugeen Shores. Staff retained J.L. Richardson to complete this study, which pulls together public input from flash vote, internal staff feedback, and research from neighboring municipalities that have already or are developing STR programs. The purpose is to give council a clear understanding of the legislative framework, local market conditions, and regulatory options available. The study doesn't provide a final program, but instead lays out a background information for potential pathways for what an STR licensing model could look like in Saugeen Shores. It acts as a foundation for council to determine whether and how to move forward. If council chooses to proceed, the next steps include posting the study for public review and comment, drafting a licensing bylaw and bringing it to council for review, bringing forward an administrative and budget analysis, and finally presenting a bylaw for adoption, work that would align with the 2027 business plan. Tonight's presentation from J.L. Richardson will walk you through the key findings in much more detail. I am happy to answer any questions following the consultant's presentation. And with that, I would like to introduce Allison Luma of J.L. Richardson, who will begin the presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay through the audio? Yes.
We're having a little trouble hearing you. Can you try again there?
Okay. How is that?
Yeah, we got
is
you
that
now
coming
real well.
through
Thank
clear?
you.
Great. Hey, I'm here tonight with two of my colleagues. So I'm here with AJ Ray, who is the president of Exposcape, who provided a lot of the background and foundational information on this report relating to the short-term rental market in Saugeen Shores, administrative and digital tools that would be required through a short-term rental program, as well as revenue and cost recovery models. As well as Rebecca Elphick from my office. She is a planner who has been instrumental in pulling together this report. So we are all three of us here and available to answer questions after the presentation. Next slide, please. So in terms of time, I will skip through some of the introductory materials, but this is the agenda that we'll speak to through the presentation. So what are short-term rental accommodations? What are some of the licensing requirements? What does the market in Saugeen Shores look like? There were two surveys that were done of both staff and the community, so we'll give you some feedback on that. And then we will speak a little bit more to some of the case studies that we looked at through the case study review that pulled on best practices from other municipalities in a similar context to Saugeen Shores. Next slide, please. So short-term rentals are private residential dwellings that are rented for brief periods of time. Typically in other municipalities, it would be for 30 days or less for any individual one rental period. They provide temporary overnight accommodation to the traveling, the vacationing public. So similar to as you have a taxi service and then you had Uber, this is very similar to that in place of where you have more commercially oriented uses such as hotels and motels. This is short-term rental is where there is a dwelling that is then rented out for that traveling and vacationing public. It can include entire dwellings. It can include just a dwelling unit or even an individual room in a home. I think it's important that we understand the distinction, though, between a bed and breakfast and a short-term rental because there are a couple of key functional differences here. A bed and breakfast, the owner of the home actually lives in the home and then rents out a room or two to somebody who can, stay overnight, perhaps have breakfast in the morning and so on. But the owner of the home is present throughout that. The use of the dwelling as a residential use does not change. It is still part of the housing stock. Whereas with a short-term rental, the owner does not stay in the property while it's being rented out. And in a sense, that house is no longer part of the housing stock because it is being used for that vacationing and traveling public. And if it's not in use, then it would be vacant. Okay, next slide, please. So currently, short-term rentals are not licensed within Saugeen Shores. Uh, they are, however, a source of, that boosts local tourism and economic development, and it generally reinforces some of the tourist capacity of the town. There is benefits, pluses and minuses to short-term rentals. There is definitely the economic reinforcement that comes from the short-term rental that does have to be balanced with the need for the housing stock in the community. There are some impacts of short-term rentals, but quite frankly, many of those can be managed. So that would be potentially noise complaints or parking if there's an excess of cars that are associated on the weekend with a group that comes up. It does generate waste. And to some degree, when we did the survey, there was some concerns that had been noted with diminished community cohesion. But again, many of those can be managed. So licensing can provide a mechanism to track or limit the number of short-term rental operators. It can be used to geographically track or even guide where these occur in the town. Is there certain areas of the town where they would be appropriate and certain areas where they perhaps would be less appropriate? It also ensures a mechanism to ensure safety of the user group and the community. So it is an avenue to require inspections, and in particular, that would be fire code for fire standards and violations, and the Ontario Building Code to make sure the structures themselves are safe. The licensing through the Municipal Act also applies the opportunity, not just for voluntary compliance with the standards for the short-term rentals, but that licensing bylaw gives it some teeth and gives the municipality the ability to enforce those standards. And perhaps most importantly, the municipal licensing bylaw gives the municipality an opportunity to recover costs for that licensing system and regulatory system. Next slide, please. So in Saugeen Shores, the accommodation market is essentially made up of those three key components in the diagram there. There's 380 hotel or motel rooms and 4 campgrounds. And through the work done by Exposcape, we identified that there were 163 short-term rental listings within Saugeen Shores, and that was as of December 2025. The majority of the hotel and motel rooms are located in the Port Elgin settlement area, and the short-term rental units were found throughout both Port Elgin and Southampton, and some agricultural areas of the town. And in looking at that chart, I would point out that the majority of the short-term rental units tend to be 2 or 3 bedroom units. And the average cost per night for those is between, I would say, $200 to $250 per night, and bringing in a revenue of just under $8,000 or so there. So that is sort of the on-the-ground impact that we saw as of 2025 in December. Next slide, please. So we did do a survey of municipal staff in November last year to gather just some insights and feedbacks regarding short-term rentals. And those surveys were applied to staff across different departments. And the questions focused on 5 key themes. So the first one being, and I won't go through all of these, I'll hit sort of the top 3 and various of those columns there, but what were the goals and objectives for a short-term licensing bylaw? What is the town hoping to achieve? And number 1 was the safety and well-being of visitors and tenants. So again, that is where we want to make sure that those structures, because they are private structures, that they are safe, they are in compliance with the Ontario Building Code, that fire codes are being adhered to, and that it's a good opportunity for people to be safely in the community. The second was accountability of the landlords. And in particular, this is for example, landlords that they respond when issues arise and to minimize nuisance impacts. And so in other municipalities within those case studies that we looked at, in many cases, if there was a situation that was occurring, say the noise was too loud, those landowners, they had to either allocate somebody who was responsible for that short-term rental unit, or they themselves had to be able to respond within a given time frame. So those sorts of things to make landlords accountable. There is different ways of doing that proactively. So in part, that would be through an application process where all of the right information is provided to the town. That would be in terms of having all of that contact information readily available, and education programs. And I can't stress this enough, where we saw that the short-term rentals were really successfully regulated in other municipalities. There was a lot of upfront effort in the educational component of those programs, so that there was very much a cooperative working relationship between the short-term rental operators and the town. And there was an understanding for why that regulatory framework was in place. And then, of course, that does need to be backed up with something that has a little bit more teeth to it. But we'll get to that later in the presentation. And then the third objective there was stable neighborhoods for the residents. So recognizing that many of these short-term rental properties are within neighborhoods. It is where people live, or where they have cottages. They are also taxpayers in the surrounding properties. So we want to make sure that there is not a very negative impact on those areas, and that this is all working very collaboratively together. The second theme was looking at the experiences with short-term rentals, in particular the complaints and issues. And again, many of these are easily remedied with both education and some regulations, but the top three there were parking, noise, and waste management. I guess the fourth one too being the high occupancy of a single short-term rental. Staff did note that they didn't know of any geographic concentrations of issues or complaints. So there was no particular one area or one street that seemed to be a little out of control. It looked like everything was fairly even across the board. The third area that the staff provided input on was in terms of the permissions for the short-term rentals in Saugeen Shores. And it was staff's purview that short-term rentals should be permitted across all housing types. Here, I would offer a little bit of a caution that we do want to have a balance between short-term rentals and housing stock. I think we do probably want to have a few criteria there, perhaps requiring that they're on a publicly or municipally maintained road. The intensity on the lot, for example, in many municipalities, short-term rentals cannot be on a lot where there is also an additional dwelling unit, a garden suite, or a group home, or a bed and breakfast, or a home occupation. You want to be careful that you're not sort of over-intensifying that use within the residential area. So, I think there would be a few criteria that we would recommend that you would hang around that. Staff also generally did not support geographic restrictions in where the short-term rentals may be located. So again, it was staff's sense that they should be permitted across the town. Again, I think with the right conditions in place, I think that's probably fine. The fourth area was looking at cost and revenue, and staff had a moderate consensus that ensuring revenue covers the cost of the short-term rental licensing framework was important. Of the 6 case studies that we looked at, only one case study was not revenue neutral and didn't foresee that they ever would be revenue neutral, but the other 5 absolutely were. And of those case studies, at least a good chunk of them were self-sustaining, and they were feeding into themselves. The other important objective for staff was that it was easily implementable and a manageable framework. And again, we need to consider the timing and resources that it would take at a staff level. Again, looking at what is that administrative process, both to apply for the short-term rental and then to monitor and regulate the short-term rental, it would also be considering the digital tools. So it's not just the process, but what would be the impact on the digital tools to do that. And then finally, the last area that was on the survey to staff was in regards to enforcement mechanisms. And more than half of all the staff responses indicated general support for pretty much any and all measures as tools to regulate short-term rentals. So this really runs the gamut. It can go from a warning of an infraction. There is also a demerit point system, monetary fines, or if we looked at it through AMPS, which is administrative monetary penalties, which the benefit of that is that those penalties and those fines stay within the community as opposed to going being exported out through the court system. Some municipalities also looked at short-term rental license suspensions or outright revocation of the license if it was a repeat offender. And in this regard, so I can give you an example. In one of the case study municipalities, this was in the first year of their program, and there was one property that was just a little out of control. And every weekend, bylaw enforcement showed up, and they issued another AMP, another fine. And of course, AMPs go on your property tax bill. So, I mean, it's just accumulating. And this went on all summer. And Rebecca can correct me if I'm mistaken in this, but it was something like $10,000 worth of fines that they had racked up by the end of the summer. I actually think it might have been more, but Rebecca will have that number at the end of the presentation. But these are some of the things that we asked staff about, and this was some of the key feedback that we got from staff. Next slide, please. So in the summer of this year, in July, the town initiated a public opinion survey, very similar to gather insights. And again, there was 5 key themes to that survey. The first one being the awareness of short-term rentals in neighborhoods. And most respondents indicated that they knew of at least one short-term rental property in the neighborhood, but very few indicated that they were themselves actually operating a short-term rental property. So I don't know that that survey really tapped into those operators. I don't know how represented they were in that survey. The second theme was experiences with the short-term rental complaints and issues. And again, it was some of the standard issues. The majority respondents indicated that they hadn't really experienced any negative nuisances or issues related to short-term rentals. But of those that did, again, it was loud noise, parking, an excessive dog barking. Again, these are all very manageable things, and they are things that you would be managing through your other bylaws under the Municipal Act anyway. You will already have a noise bylaw. You will already have a parking bylaw. So, this isn't really new territory. The third area of the survey inquired about the potential benefits of short-term rentals in Saugeen Shores. And the respondents ranked those in accordance with the importance. It's interesting to note that within the survey, multiple answers could have been chosen. So you will see some of these numbers are not adding up to 100%, but that's because respondents had the ability to choose multiple answers. But of the areas of importance, reinforcing and supporting local and small businesses was high on the list, as well as making property ownership more affordable for homeowners. That's an interesting one, though, because short-term rental units are not being used for housing stock. So I can only assume that in that situation, these are people who were buying a property, perhaps renting it out as a short-term rental until they had it significantly paid off and then using it for themselves. I'm not sure exactly what the context of was because that survey was done in the summer before we were brought on board. And then also providing less expensive options for people to stay as visitors. So perhaps reinforcing that economic benefit to the community. The fourth theme, again, this is your community input, was the potential mechanisms for regulating short-term rentals. So requiring short-term rentals to be registered with an owner's phone number and complaint form was the most popular answer. That would be something that would be sort of foundational to any short-term rental program, because of course, as the town and by law enforcement, they would have to have that. If something was happening, they'd have to be able to contact the owner or the person responsible. Other popular options from your community were that requiring short-term rentals to be permitted and subject to losing their permit if there was a number of violations. And again, limiting the parking on the street. But again, you have a parking bylaw that would come into play there as well. And the final theme in the community survey was probed regulations for short-term rentals. And a lot of that was very similar with what we heard from staff. So mandatory registration of the short-term rental properties, fire code compliance, regular inspections, clear owner accountability, minimum stays of at least 1 week. That I guess that would alleviate a lot of the frequent turnover. Limits on guest occupancy, there's a couple ways we can do that, and limiting short-term rentals to areas of the town. So again, I think fundamentally a question or the town would need to consider, where exactly do we want these short-term rentals to be permitted? And what conditions would we like put on them? And that needs to be balanced with the need for the long-term housing stock, but also for any shorter-term housing stock that's needed for places like Bruce Power and so on. Next slide, please. So very basically, quickly, I'll take your vision over there to the chart there on the right. We have a cascading system here in Ontario, and that municipal act should really be off to the side because that municipal act functions separately on its own. But beyond that, the Planning Act provides us with all of our land use permissions and that we have in the province. The provincial planning statement then identifies all these areas of provincial interest, and that goes all the way through from population projections to environment to hazard lands to employment areas to a number of different things, which then feeds down to the Bruce County official plan. So the Bruce County official plan must conform or be consistent with, I should say, the provincial planning statement. And then the Saugeen Shores official plan must conform to the Bruce County OP, and the zoning bylaw is what implements all of it. So the zoning bylaw is actually a statute and implements it. So the policies for short-term rentals in the official plans, they must all be consistent all the way down, and then the zoning bylaw implements it. As I said, the Municipal Act is slightly different. It has different requirements. It doesn't have the same consultation and public meeting requirements that the Planning Act does. They're separate and distinct. But what we generally found is that short-term rental units have not been addressed really in the county's OP policy context. They have in a very light touch way. We looked at the draft county official plan because it is imminent to being approved. It's sitting with the province and we would expect approval sometime shortly. So that's what we focused on in this report. It does include policies to enable local municipalities to use planning and licensing tools appropriate to short-term rentals, but it essentially defers to the local municipalities as to what would be most appropriate in their communities. Those permissions can occur within the rural area as a commercial use. And then it gives discretion for the lower tier municipalities as to what would be most appropriate within their primary and secondary urban communities, giving consideration to the function of the settlement area and the range of uses that are there and so on. Short-term rentals are not really specifically addressed within the shoreline and seasonal recreational area, although it does highlight that these are the primary areas for tourism and recreation, including residential accommodation required to support those uses. So it doesn't really directly address them, but it does set the context for the municipality to go ahead and regulate them. Next slide, please. Okay, so within Saugeen Shores, the Saugeen Shores is silent on short-term rental permissions and potential mechanisms for regulation. We would recommend that some additional policies may help to refine a more detailed strategy that differentiates again between those short-term rental units and housing stock in terms of what are the goals and objectives of the town. There is something there that needs to be rationalized from a policy perspective, looking at the different needs of each of those different uses and the different locational requirements as well. The Saugeen Shores zoning bylaw does not define a short-term rental accommodation, and it does not establish it as a permitted use in any zone. So again, we are recommending that there would be provisions put into the zoning bylaw or introduced to the zoning bylaw that would do a few things. One, that would define what a short-term rental unit is, and then to identify them within certain zones. So in terms of regulating short-term bylaws, your zoning bylaw is really a dull instrument to do that. It has a usefulness that is very narrow, and I would say that is to regulate the use and then to identify where it's permitted. The real effective tool that you have at your disposal is the Municipal Act, because that allows you to do so much more that you cannot do in zoning. You can charge fees, you can issue penalties, you can do much more under that Municipal Act. It is a much more flexible tool for you to do that. So in terms of the zoning, what I would say you would want to look at is permissions for what type of dwelling would you permit the short-term rental unit in? Would it only be a detached dwelling? Would it maybe be a dwelling unit above a ground floor commercial if it was in the community core zone? You would look at regulating where there are similar uses. So I spoke to that earlier, where, you know, on one property, you wouldn't want a short-term rental unit and an additional dwelling unit and a garden suite and a number of other uses. You would want to manage the combination that could occur on any given lot. You may consider separation distances between short-term rental units. I know the Township of Ramera does that. And you would perhaps introduce parking standards or parking rates into the bylaw. So beyond that, or perhaps requiring them to be on a municipally maintained road, public road. Beyond that, I wouldn't do more than that in the zoning. I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend that the nuances of how these things are regulated would occur within that licensing bylaw. Next slide, please.
So Allison, council has a fair bit of work to get to this evening. So if you can wrap up the presentation, I'm sure folks will have questions on these items as well.
Sure, absolutely. So this slide here just looks at where the case studies were. The 6 case studies all ringed around Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. Next slide, please. And then these are the key areas of the licensing bylaw, the authorization, the occupancy limits, who would be responsible, what kind of record keeping would be required, what kind of ownership requirements for the actual unit that's being used as a short-term rental, building types, a renter information package so that your tenants are behaving within a code of conduct, and how to limit the number of short-term rentals within the municipality if that was something that you elected to do. Next slide, please. So this is just the administrative framework that you would need, the application, the inspections, the payment of fees, and how those permits are renewed on an annual or biannual basis. Next slide, please. And then these are the different enforcement mechanisms. So we did talk about these also. So a demerit point system or a complaint system where you would lose demerits and they would be ranked according to how significant the infraction was. Monetary fines, which would either go through Provincial Offenses Act, which is court, or the AMPS, the Administrative Monetary Policies. And this is one thing we hadn't talked to yet, is the appeals process. Generally, the case studies have used a third-party appeal. You could identify somebody in the municipality that would hear an appeals process if an operator objected to one of the penalties, but most municipalities are bringing in a third party to do that. Next slide, please. And then we have, yep, this is the last primary slide. So these are cost recovery models. So activity-based cost recovery, where the application fees are based upon the cost of the program. So you basically calculate the salary if you needed to hire somebody or the bylaw enforcement officer, and then divide that up. A value capture cost recovery. So this is where you take a percentage of the profit of the short-term rental and somehow that is translated into a cost for the operator. And then the comparative cost recovery. So licensing fees based upon peer review of municipalities, so that you're staying within what others are doing in and around you. Next slide, please. And then for next steps, number one thing to do would be for the municipality to decide how they would like to move forward. I strongly recommend that some further engagement is had with the community prior to bringing forward an actual short-term licensing bylaw. And that would also be the beginning of an education program as well to bring operators on board and understand the changes as they're occurring. And should council wish to proceed, we would be happy to assist with that engagement program and to begin to build a bylaw for the town. And with that, that concludes the presentation. And we have both AJ and Rebecca and myself here for questions.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I'm sure there will be some questions. But first, there's a recommendation that council direct staff to continue the next steps related to the development of the short-term rental program. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Don't see any. So we'll have some discussion first then. How about we'll start with Councillor Mayette and then come to Councillor Halpin. And then I see the Deputy Mayor as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I've written down a few questions and I had a few in my head because I did review all of the material before the meeting today, including the 63-page report. My first question is to the bylaw officer. You mentioned in your introduction that this is as a result of ongoing council discussion. I know we had a negative vote on a MAT tax, but I don't recall any ongoing discussions with council on this issue. And how did it get here?
Well, it was in the, I can answer that. It was directed in the 2025 business plan.
Okay, I'll accept that then. All right. With regards to JL Richards, Allison, could you tell me how many other municipalities you're servicing with this type of study and suggested bylaw? Because quite frankly, the bylaw that is in the suggested bylaw framework that's in there, I was reading it today and it looked awfully familiar. Can you tell me who else are your clients in this?
Well, we don't have any other current clients on this study. A study was done for Halliburton a number of years ago. I personally, when with another firm, was involved in the town of Penetanguishene study. One of our other colleagues was involved with the town of Meaford when they did a study, but I'm not aware of any other current clients doing this.
All right, just the Kincardine community is going to be voting on a bylaw this week in their council, and their bylaw is almost identical with the point system and everything else. So you came up with a definition of a short-term rental and a definition of a bed and breakfast. And you made a clear distinction that in order to be a bed and breakfast, the owner proprietor has to live on site. And a short-term rental that by definition, they would not be residing on site. But later on, we talked about one of the proponents in their survey said that it would be beneficial for people to be able to afford their homes. And I think where that comes from is our municipality has been actively encouraging builders to build their new homes with active, we want to call it a granny suite or a secondary suite roughed in or built into the basement with a separate entrance. So people are buying homes and using that extra suite on an Airbnb or a VRBO. So that's where that comes from. So I don't know whether that would be a bed and breakfast or whether that would be a short-term rental. I think it fits somewhere in between. Do you have any comments on that?
I think it's fair to say it fits somewhere in between. I think we need to look at the occurrence of that in the town. But classically, the bed and breakfast is distinguished by the fact that the owner operator lives there, and whereas the short-term rental, it could be a property owner who's not even local. It's somebody who's not living in the property.
Okay, so I just.
Rebecca, do you have a comment you wanted to make in response to the counselor there?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Some municipalities have further regulated this to exclude short-term rental accommodations from being permitted on lots where there are additional residential units. So in that instance where there's a granny suite, whether that's a basement apartment or a standalone accessory building, that you wouldn't be able to have a short-term rental accommodation there with that sort of more so accommodating the more permanent rental housing stock to provide for affordable housing within the town.
Well, that would be unfortunate because there are lots of people, or there are some people, I wouldn't say lots of people, but there are some people who are doing just that in our municipality. And I would never be in favor of regulating that out of existence. You come up with a figure of 163 short-term rentals in our community. Is that simply by going through Airbnb and VRBO, or did you use another methodology for calculating that number?
I'll send that to AJ.
Thank you, Councillor, through your worship. The method we use was actually developed in the academic literature, and it involves multiple searches over a period of months so that we account for listings that may only appear during the summer or may only appear seasonally. And it involves searching multiple platforms as well as advanced internet searching is what I'll call it, to find independent operators that may not use these types of lists. Of course, there could be an undercount or an overcount here, but I'm quite confident that the number probably is around 163, give or take a few.
Okay, thank you. It just seemed to be a random kind of number to me. It was also stated that currently there are no particular issues or complaints that were reported to you. I would suggest that whether it's permanent homeowners or whether it's permanent rentals or whether it's short-term rentals or whether it's bed and breakfast, you're going to get the same kind of complaints. And as it was stated in the presentation, Allison said that we do have bylaws to regulate these things. We have noise bylaws, we have dog bylaws, we have dogs off leash bylaws, we have lots of different bylaws. And quite frankly, we struggle to enforce the current bylaws we have. We have current non-compliance issues throughout our community, and it gets very difficult to sometimes bring those residents and those properties into compliance, despite there being heavily fined and lots of different mechanisms for that. So to bring in a structure of, and what I saw in the bylaw, a very complicated structure of points and demerits and licenses and number of rooms and inspections and costs for multiple inspections and yearly inspections and having to hire a full-time bylaw officer and with, it just seems like a lot of administration. And so for that reason, I don't think that I'm going to be able to support this. I don't think that we have a problem in our community. But I'll go further than that. I'll say that we don't need to look very far to find out whether or not this is a worthwhile program, because as I stated earlier, the municipality of Kincardine is going to be presumably adopting a very similar, if not identical, bylaw to what's been suggested here today in their municipality on Wednesday. And all we have to do is wait a couple of years and see how it works out for them, see if they have the desired effect. And maybe their situation is different. Certainly their geographic area is much larger than ours. They have several smaller municipality or small towns within their municipality. They have more shoreline than we do, but I would suggest that the issues are likely very similar. And I would like to wait and see what happens down there and to see if they actually get to a situation where they're in a full cost recovery mode on this. I have a hard time believing that's possible. We're already, as was stated in one of the earlier presentations, that our community is getting weary of taxes and fees, increasing 25% over the past 4 years, I think was the figure that was used. And this is just going to be seen as another tax, and a significant tax. You know, $500 to $1,000 fees, licensing fees, plus costs for inspections. I think it's just too much, and I don't think we're ready for it. And I think we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. So thanks very much for your presentation, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin, and then the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Yeah, I feel like when I ran for council, one of the things I was concerned about was representing small business, which often seemed to be overshadowed. And so, you know, I think my view on this will be predictable to people. When you talk about these 163 units, does that include cottage parks? Like, I live in the heart of the cottage park area. There's one across from me, behind me, beside me, and a bed and breakfast on the other side of me. So did these, how were the cottage parks counted in this?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Through you, Your Worship, those were accounted for in our searching. Certainly, we would capture those through the independent listings if they were not already listed through one of the platforms. To provide further clarity on our method, we actually build out a geographic database so that we don't double count or triple count something if it's listed across multiple platforms. But I'm quite confident that all those cottage park properties, I've visited Port Elgin many times and I'm very aware of where you're talking about. So those would be included.
Thank you. And if I can continue, Mayor, through you, I do want to point out that in my engagement of my neighbors and the people who own the cottage parks and around me, none of them are really in favor of having them licensed or taxed. And they don't feel that that's going to help business to have more regulation and more taxes on it. And I figure as soon as we register all these, the next logical step will be to tax them. And if, so I also want to address the issue about, okay, we need housing stock. Yet at the same time, we're a tourist town. And a lot of small businesses depend on tourists. A lot of restaurants do. Others, you know, obviously the cottage parks do. And a lot of people depend on tourism. So like having short-term rentals isn't a bad word in Saugeen Shores. It isn't a bad word, and it isn't a bad thing. We talked about Lamont Sport Park with 10 tournaments, and you said 2,000 rooms. Well, presumably those people are staying in those short-term accommodations when they come to places like this. And the other thing that fits in well is the guest workers. Now I'm biased on this. I had 2 cottage parks. I owned them for 11 years or 12 years. I did that. And, you know, it fits in perfectly with the tourist season. And then you move from there. And yeah, frankly, I did a couple ball tournaments. I'd never do another men's ball tournament again in my life. But I had golfers that would come in that shoulder season. And then you're renting to contractors who work at Bruce Power, which it's not a bad word. It's not a bad thing to have rental income for all those people that come here to work. And believe me, they spend money in the community. Some of those guys, I don't think they ever use their stove, you know, so they're just eating in restaurants all the time. So I want to know what problem that we're trying to solve, because if you had a place registered and there was noise, you're going to send the bylaw officer anyways, whether it was registered or not. And for parking, if they're violating parking, give them tickets. When I had my cottage park, I had a strict occupancy of not only people, of how many vehicles I could take in the winter. And sometimes I'd have to turn guys down and say, yeah, I know it's a 2-bedroom, but there's only 1 parking spot, guys. So you can both stay there, but only 1 car could stay. And sometimes that would cost me a rental, but you know, landlords have to do that. I appreciate the report. I read the whole thing. I also feel like we don't have to be the guinea pig on this. Lots of other municipalities seem to be jumping in. Let them jump in and we can come back and look at it. But I can't be supporting this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I got the deputy mayor and then Councillor Stack. You're on mute there, Diane.
I did have my hand up earlier to get something moved so that it could get on the floor. So just, that's why my hand was up
Sorry
earlier.
about that.
That's okay. I appreciate all of the research and the comments that are in this report. I would have moved to continue the discovery and dialogue with municipal staff, you know, and thinking about other licensing bylaws that are happening immediately adjacent to us or you know, in other tourist areas of the province. And the reason for that is that I think it's about equity. When Councillor Halpin mentions cottage parks, my assumption about a cottage park is it's run as a business. So the people who own businesses, you know, they have I don't know, I think a sense of responsibility and also in some cases with other businesses that support tourism in our community, trailer parks and hotels and motels, they do have a regulatory framework surrounding their business that they have to adhere to. And there's also a real tight connection to an owner should there be some sort of problem. I appreciate what Councillor Halpin and a number of other members have said about bylaw enforcement, but when you know you're dealing with you know, for lack of a better description, people who might just be here for a couple of days or a weekend, you know, what do they care? Whereas, you know, people who live in a neighborhood who are now forced into just accepting that there's a different kind of use in their neighborhood that wasn't there originally. And I'm not discounting, you know, additional residential units and granny flats and that sort of thing. And I appreciate what Councillor Mayette said about people, you know, enabling people in their houses to help them with expenses, and the way that he described that was right on. However, you know, some of these short-term uses are showing up in areas that are traditionally not quote unquote tourist areas. I really appreciate and hope we do get to, whether or not we have a full-fledged licensing bylaw, we get to an education piece that is provided on a regular basis to property owners who are engaging in this kind of business. You know, there are bylaws that you know, it's important that they have awareness and in whatever way that they can manage to do it, provide that information along to their guests. Signage is an issue too. There's signs, ground signs up on a whole bunch of properties now in both Southampton and Port Elgin. Ground signs are not allowed in residential areas. And it's you know, they're just there. People need to know that this is not what is enabled in our bylaw. So I hope even if we don't do a licensing bylaw, that we come up with some kind of education piece that is in some way provided to as many short-term rental accommodation owners as possible, so that the concerns of the fire chief, the comments about insurance and the comments about a number of bylaws, and parking was mentioned, noise was mentioned. I would add signage to that list too. You know, that there's an awareness level that perhaps, you know, we can see I guess a little more opportunity for people to fit into a neighborhood a little bit better when it's not a quote unquote tourist area. I would like to see us go forward with this. You know, it's I think that there's an inequity with business owners, and I do appreciate what Councillor Halpin in particular said about the tax situation. But when you look at motels, hotels, trailer parks, you know, they're covering some expenses or some taxes that, you know, why is somebody who's basically running a business not at least being considered for the same sort of framework, because they are running a business in our community. So I really appreciate the report, and if nothing else, I would hope that we would work towards an education piece that that includes, you know, some relevant things to doing business in our community and to being part of the community so as not to diminish community cohesion. I like that expression in the report, but I really appreciate the report, and I do hope we go forward with more information coming back to council because I think there's some merit. I do respect, though, also the comment about other folks are doing it around us. If we just wait a little bit, we can see what works, what doesn't work, and you know, then go from there. That might be a good plan forward, but I wouldn't want to see us just completely discount everything. But perhaps it's not immediate. An education piece might be immediate, but it's not immediate to move forward with a bylaw. Maybe that's 2 years down the road or something. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stack.
Thank you. So I thought the report was helpful. I did read the whole thing. It was, I wouldn't say it was necessarily an easy read, but just a couple of comments I think will align with some of the other feedback here. So I think, you know, when I looked at the concept of a licensing regime, I think my first thought was a lot of these issues are already regulated by bylaws. So noise, parking, signage. So we have existing bylaws, and I think the feedback around enforcement of those bylaws has been pretty consistent, at least during my term, where we struggle with access to bylaw enforcement in order to enforce the regime. So, you know, my general thought is, while in theory, you know, I could understand the premise. I think, you know, having spoken to some, you know, accommodations owners, I'll say, I think some of the regimes can be quite frustrating and challenging. And the one I would point to in particular is Tiny Ontario. So they've put one in. It was in response to community feedback that was actually demanding a licensing regime because they did have an issue with housing full stop. And I think short-term rentals were a major issue there. I don't think it's the same comparison. However, and this, where I'm going probably won't surprise anyone here. I think what I thought is, you know, and again, I'm going to try my best to not make this a discussion around the political perspective, because I think there's a partisan angle to either side of this. I think municipal accommodations tax was sort of, I think, flagged in this report. I think that's where we need to look. And the reason I posit this to the council is as follows. So earlier this year, we took $500,000 out of the tax stabilization fund. And my recollection is when we talked about the municipal accommodation tax, one of the comments was around the amount of revenue it could generate. And, you know, I think we have just seen, you know, a user group come in here and ask for a recreational investment that could be anywhere from, depending on the resource, $10 to $20 million. So wouldn't it be interesting to actually consider, not do, but spend the resources rather than investigating a licensing regime that I think council has expressed some, I think, fair reservations. Again, I want to put it to council, and I'm happy to have the challenge of whether I can put a motion here again, but why aren't we considering a municipal accommodation tax? We keep these people come into our communities, and yes, they spend money in restaurants, but they also use our infrastructure. They use our recreational infrastructure. They use our beaches. They use our roads. They use our, you know, any number of items that we require here. They require bylaw enforcement, garbage pickup, all these things that we pay for, and they do not pay for. And property taxes do not pay for it. So I think, I'm going to be a broken record here, but we spend a lot of time talking about what we need to do in this community to support what people want. I think it's been very clear what people want. They want lower taxes, but they also want investments in recreation. And so we can talk about, you know, the credits and debits required to get there, but I think I would rather see focus on a municipal accommodation tax, which has plenty of evidence in this province as functioning well and not degrading tourism. So anyways, I don't know if it's possible, but again, I would be remiss if I didn't say, I'm not a huge fan of this licensing regime, but I am a big fan of investigating whether a municipal accommodation tax is where we need to go.
Can I just say, if any member of council wants to reconsider anything that council, any decision of council, you can always bring a motion to reconsider. And you can introduce that as a notice of motion, and council will consider it. No, just introduce it at an upcoming meeting and whenever you're ready. Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll start with just what ended. I'll second it. if we ever get to that point, I will second that notice of motion on an accommodation tax study and so on. Some of the things have already been discussed. The license cost has been discussed. If I was a short-term rental person, I wouldn't tell anybody that I was short-term. It would just be word of mouth. And it would get used because I don't want to pay these license costs. And then if we approve this bylaw, to have it come in as well. So I wouldn't do that. I like the education awareness. I think that's a good idea. We should send that out with tax bills and what have you. The bottom line for me is hiring a full-time bylaw enforcement officer to push this program along. We stopped. We did our budget and we hired everybody that we're going to hire, and we don't need to be hiring midstream another full-time person. For that reason alone, I'm not going to support this particular presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I just had a few questions, just so I understand the report. First of all, thank you for your presentation. I'm just wondering, in your journeys, other municipalities, once they implemented the licensing program, we have 163 units, you mentioned, I think that was the number. Do you find in other municipalities, once the licensing program comes in, that people actually say, throw their hands up and say, I'm not paying a license fee, I'm not going to be governed, I'm not going to be watched over, and just throw their hands up and say, I'm out of it, and then all of a sudden drops from 163 units down to 100 units? Do you find, or whatever that number may be, do you find that in municipalities you've worked with, that number actually decreases once the program is put into place? Or what are you seeing?
Rebecca, would you like to field that one?
Sure, and thank you for the question, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would add that it depends a little bit on what the municipality's goal was in putting forward the licensing regime. So we did talk to, I think, 5 different municipalities that had ranging from 5-6 years through to implementation to just having recently implemented a program. In one case, short-term rental accommodations were really a problem in terms of some of the nuisances that we discussed, and it was an intention of their council that they wanted to see less of that use occurring in their municipality, that it wasn't going to the same kind of context as Saugeen Shores, where it could be a good tourism or economic development driver. And in that case, they did utilize bylaw enforcement fairly aggressively within the first year. That was the case study that Allison spoke to during her presentation. And I looked back at my notes. This one property in particular is the exact case that you were talking to, that every single weekend had guests staying but didn't want to register or participate in the program. Every single weekend, bylaw enforcement was there to administer a fine, a monetary penalty, and by the end of the summer had accrued, I think, $75,000 worth of fines. And in that case, I think the bank ended up repossessing that property. It wasn't a happy story, but wasn't by any means the case when we looked across other municipalities where that wasn't their goal, where they didn't want to see those short-term uses really fall within the municipality. I think it really, the way you structure the program and the licensing regime has a big impact on the impact of how many uses would continue after regulation. On the flip side, in Northern Bruce Peninsula, they were really successful in having a really strong public engagement and education campaign that was brought operators on board rather than slapping them on the wrist the first time they had an offense. There were a lot of warnings that were issued, trying to rationalize why they were why the property was not in compliance before they would go forward with issuing, whether that's a complaint or a demerit or a fine. And in that case was really successful in bringing operators on board with their program.
Okay, thanks for that. And I just wanted to clarify, with a licensing, and I'm not sure there's going to be, I'm hearing maybe not much support around this table from what I'm hearing for licensing, the licensing program, but just so I'm clear, motels, hotels, so if this was to be implemented, motel, hotels would be subject to licensing as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no. So hotels and motels are commercial use, and the licensing bylaw would be specifically for short-term rentals only.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that. I rather like the idea about the communications piece in the short term, and I rather like Councilor Mayette's suggestion, like concordance voting on it on Wednesday, and maybe it's a wait and see thing. I also, I'm not against other municipalities do the accommodation tax. Probably would be not support around the table from some, but I think it maybe could be looked at. So I think there's I think it's a wait and see as well, and you know, see how things go in Kincard. But I think short term, that communications piece is a good idea that our Vice Deputy Mayor mentioned. And anyways, thanks for your presentation.
Thank you. Are there further comments? Does anybody, I know the Deputy Mayor tried to move this resolution, so I'll ask the Deputy Mayor, do you want to move this resolution now and see if there's a seconder or not?
Sure, but is it possible to potentially separate the communications piece from the licensing bylaw or licensing regime, as it's been called?
I think we could consider this resolution, and then staff could hear that, have heard that, and perhaps could consider potentially how you might come back with something on education. Is that possible? The CAO says yes. So we can leave that piece to staff. I don't think we need to give specific direction on that. They'll consider it and come back to us with something. But if you want to make the motion that council directs staff to continue the next steps related to the development of the short-term rental program, that's moved by the Deputy Mayor. I can ask, is there a seconder? No, there is no seconder. So we won't consider the resolution. So I'll just conclude the discussion by saying thank you to our consultants. I appreciate, we've gotten a good, fulsome and very detailed look at short-term rental licensing and what a regime might look like, which is an important thing for council to see and understand, because it was a topic that we identified in our 2025 business plan, something we wanted to think about. Being totally transparent, I've never been in favor of a short-term rental licensing regime or a municipal accommodation tax for that matter. And I don't intend to become in favor of either of those things. But I think it's, there's definitely folks out there in the community who are interested in us talking about these things and looking at them and understanding them. And so we've done that here. And I think, concluded that with respect to Saugeen Shores, the level of the issue doesn't necessarily merit the regime we'd have to structure to address whatever issues there are. I think, we've done, if it comes down, I think most of this started with a conversation about housing, right? And how to, this council has tried to do a huge array of things to get more housing in our community. And this was one of the pieces we looked at. I think what we've ended up doing in Saugeen Shores is erring more on the side of reducing regulation and increasing incentives to get housing. And we've been very successful at that. We've doubled the amount of purpose-built rental in the community in the last 3 years. And so that regime is working for us. It may not work in every community, but it works in Saugeen Shores. And so we don't necessarily need additional regulation here in order to solve our housing issue. I think that's my conclusion, and I think maybe the conclusion of others around the table in addition to the things that have already been said. So we'll leave it at that, and thank you all for your presentation. We appreciate it very much. Okay, so we'll move on now then to 9.3, which is on the 2026 road capital budget adjustments, and we'll turn that over to the manager of engineering.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, members of council. The purpose of this report just to align project budgets with actual tender pricing. And thank you again to the council for all the budget pre-approvals. We received most of our tender submissions, and as a result, we need some adjustment. I have to mention that no additional funding is required for this adjustment. These are just internal transfer or reallocations. So two projects generated notable surpluses, which is Wellington Street reconstruction and asphalt resurfacing. And we have shortfalls for two projects. One is Bricker Street reconstruction. The other one is River Street. I just need to admit that we have a typo. This will be River Street, not River Road. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for identifying this typo. So, as I said, these adjustments are fully contained within the approved 2026 budget, capital budget, and no impact on the tax levy or any external funding. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So there is a resolution that council approved $475,000 for funding various roads projects funded by transfer from road capital project surpluses as outlined in table 1 of the report. Is there a mover and seconder? Helping to Haim, discussion. The deputy mayor and then Councillor Davinsky.
No, mine was a mover second.
Okay, you're a little,
I have
that
a,
time
I have a,
lag.
co-
Time lag
it's
gets
okay.
to it.
I have
Go
a
ahead.
comment at the end about roads projects, but I'll wait for comments specific to the report.
Councillor Davinsky, did you have one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, at least I want to throw it out there. If I'm wrong, cut me off quickly and we can move on. Not recently. And through you to Rahul as well. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. This money that's being transferred, $325,000 for Wellington Street reconstruction, and then 150 for a River Street construction, for a total of 475. Is that money not needed for other projects? Is that the case?
The manager.
Oops, sorry, my apologies.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. Yes, you're correct. We don't need any additional money for any other project except these two projects.
And as I, through you, Mr. Mayor, as I understand it, it's money that's been realized because we put in a budget and the budget or the thing came back well under budget. So we've got this extra money. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And we don't need any additional funding. Whatever total budget we have approved in 2026, we can just readjust and this additional 475K will be funded from other projects, other surpluses. No additional fund required.
Okay, just so I understand, this money has come from other projects that were, that came in under budget, and that's the money you're using. So the money that was budgeted for 2026, not knowing that, you're saying now we could save that amount of money, $475,000.
Actually, we have more surpluses, but we just need this 475K to fund other projects that actually we receive bids above the budget numbers for that particular two projects.
Okay, I may be going off topic here and I'm not sure. When we talked about the budget, the Vice Deputy Mayor and my colleague Bud Halpin and I talked about taking money from the reserve funds to lower the taxes. And we were told then that's a dangerous thing to do because that could come back to haunt you. And I indicated then, surely we can find that money through surpluses that we may have during the course of the year. That year is now started. And if I'm reading it wrong, then I'll shut up. But 475,000 used for that to reduce that reserve fund, that money we took out of reserve fund goes a long way. As a matter of fact, I think that just leaves us $25,000 short. Am I reading it correctly? Can you do that? Is it legal? I just don't know.
Yeah, the CAO will answer.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, and because I often get accused of not doing a lot of math around here, I'll try to explain it my way, and hopefully Jim can jump in if I'm not doing it correctly. But I think that to explain it simply, the 470,000 that was used from the tax stabilization reserve was used to offset the operational budget, so the operations budget. So if you think of that, that's similar to what the mayor mentioned tonight in the annual report. That's our overhead to issue those tax bills. It's the keeping the lights on, paying the utilities. That's the operational budget. What you're seeing in front of you tonight is our capital budget. So it's only for what you're seeing is just 2026. What we did with the tax stabilization reserve is we took money and offset that operational amount that we have to make back up for every year of our plan now. So we have to find ongoing 470,000. So 1 year from capital wouldn't solve the problem. We just push it off another year.
Okay, I'll back off. You're right, I'm not understanding. Are you telling me that we have to, because we took out $470,000 during the budget, I'm sorry, it's getting a little off topic, that we have to pay that back every year for the rest of our lives?
Yeah,
That
that's
doesn't
right.
make any sense.
Well, it's because the operating costs of the municipality are fixed and it grow by inflation, et cetera, et cetera. And if you in any 1 year don't pay that whole bill, it just spills over into the next year and the next, right? You have to keep funding the pie. And so if you don't fund that whole pie, you eventually have to, and it has to be permanent funding, not one-time funding.
Okay, I still agree with what we did in order to lower the tax bite on citizens. But if this money can't be used, you're right, it's capital. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions? The Vice Deputy Mayor and
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on, this is really good news in a sense, and that Wellington Street project received a bid is $390,000 below budget. Asphalt resurfacing, a bid is 195,000 below budget for savings of 475,000. And that's allowed us to do 2 other road projects that are in desperate need as well. So I think it's turned savings into be able to do 2 other projects. I think that's a good thing. And I think that Rural and Council, I think by us approving the budget as early as we do, we've talked about this in previous years, we're getting out to tender early in the year. Sometimes you get more competitive bidding, and because we're ahead of the game, and contracting firms are looking for work early, they can set up their schedule for the year, and so you get competitive bidding. Not all the time, but in this case, it looks like we've got some really competitive bidding. So it's allowed us, Councillor Dubinsky, through Mayor, to go ahead with a couple other projects that need to get done. So I think it's a good news story, and I just wanted to thank you for all your good work, Will, and it's very creative, and we're able to move these other 2 projects forward.
thank you. The Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Duhaime.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What the Vice Deputy Mayor said is right on. It's good that we were able to do some things that enable tenders to go out early, and you get some that are low, you get some that are high, and then it balances out. So the work that you intended to do can all still be realized rather than having to shelve a project for a future year, which then messes up future year planning as well. I just wanted to make a comment, and I very much appreciate the report before us tonight, and it, in my mind, is a good news report. It sounds though as though what you said, Raul, was that you've had a fairly decent response to bids, and I'm assuming that a number of contracts have either been awarded or will be awarded soon. As a follow-up to this report, would it be possible to have some sort of communication, either at council or come out to members of council with some timelines for work, and in that regard, also starting to establish, we had such great luck with neighborhood meetings. So, the volume of construction last year was pretty incredible. And I don't think it's going to be quite as evident this year, but still, I think people appreciated knowing when start times were intended to happen, and also, just what was going to happen on their street. So I would just ask if it's possible to get an indication of some potential timelines. I'll also say that I did see some work on the Southampton Parkway, which is the stretch of the highway from South Street down towards the beer store. I saw some work there last week that I thought this must have something to do with the asphalt resurfacing, because it looked to me like they were doing samples of the depth of the road surface that's there already. So that to me is very, very promising, because, again, we got very lucky last year with the Port Elgin work that it was done, lickety split, start of construction season and actually finished ahead of time. The other comment so that's a request to just get an update at some point of timelines, and also to encourage once again these neighborhood meetings where they would be helpful to residents. I also just wanted to say, I know one of the works that's going on this summer relates to the roundabout situation, potentially at the corner where Foodland and Just Like Moms and the hotel is in Southampton, the corner of the highway and the road to Sabo Beach. I happened to drive through a roundabout today on my way down to the city, the one just south of Harrison. I never noticed before, but on that roundabout, they have signage all the way around that says "Stop for pedestrians." And one of the concerns we have about roundabouts relates to pedestrians, kind of maneuvering in the midst of that traffic. There must be some way that pedestrians can be taken into account, because again, this provincial highway roundabout had signage on 4 locations around it that I could tell were saying "Stop for pedestrians." But thank you for the report, Raul, and I hope we realize savings in some other projects so that we can either accommodate overages from estimates, or maybe even consider something else this year, or have a little bit of extra available for next year's council to spend on something worthwhile. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Haim. Any further comments or questions? Seeing nothing, then you've heard the resolution. I'll ask all in favor. That is carried. And then we'll move on to 9.4, which is the Housing Accelerator Fund. And Kristen Sears has that report. Kristen.
Okay, good evening, Council. Tonight I will be providing a Housing Accelerator Fund update, including a brief introduction to the town's commitment with the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation. I'll also be providing an update on the current reporting Gantt chart and ongoing initiatives, including their intent, current progress, and next steps. Lastly, I will be providing an update on the current reporting progress. So to quickly summarize, the town was awarded approximately $3.2 million in funding from the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, or CMHC, through the Housing Accelerator Fund in the fourth quarter of 2024. The funding supports the town's ongoing efforts to expand housing opportunities with an anticipated outcome of approximately, and I would like to just make a minor revision. My report does indicate 450 units, but it is 659 new homes over the next decade. The funding is being implemented through 8 municipal initiatives aimed at advancing long-term housing strategies. So I have provided here an initiative and reporting Gantt chart. This Gantt chart indicates the initiatives that have been completed, including, you'll see the first 3 there, the Consolidated Linear Infrastructure Environmental Compliance Approval, the Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment to enable inclusionary zoning, and the Main and Saugeen Shores Ready to Build housing designs. It also indicates ongoing initiatives, including initiatives 4 to 8, which I will provide an update on later in my presentation. Apologies. It demonstrates agreed upon project start and completion dates, as well as milestone dates, which were a requirement of our agreement with CMHC to monitor their ongoing progress. I've also identified at the bottom of the table the reporting periods. This shows the reporting we provided, including the semi-annual report that was in July of last year, the report in January of this year, and all other future reporting dates. I will now briefly run through the remaining and ongoing initiatives, including Initiative 4, being the Affordable Housing Community Improvement Plan update. The intent of this initiative was to review and update the existing Community Improvement Plan, or CIP, to develop financial incentives to support housing. The project is currently 70% complete, with anticipated completion by Q1 of 2026. A council report will be brought forward for information prior to finalization, identifying the list of recommended programs for consideration, as well as a project update in the coming weeks. With council input on the recommended programs, the consultants will begin finalizing an updated draft CIP for a public meeting. Initiative 5 is the Housing-Driven Community Planning Permit and Housing Opportunity System. The town has been working with Glad Key Planning to develop a community planning permit system, or CPPS, which is a land use planning tool designed to streamline development approvals. The CPPS combines zoning, site plan, and minor variance processes into one single approval process, reducing approval timelines from 90 to 45 days. In addition to the CPPS, the town committed to completing a Nords and Corridor study to further support the scope of the project, as well as a housing opportunity system study to diagnose the demand and supply pressures and identify strategies where the CPPS can best deliver the right homes in the right places. These are currently being finalized. So as for current progress, the project is approximately 75% complete, with the anticipated completion by Q3 of 2026. At this time, staff are currently advancing the following, being the draft sections of the bylaw that have been drafted and are currently under review, an internal workshop for town and county staff regarding the scope and intensification targets for development, which was held and is currently being reviewed to inform bylaw development. The scope currently includes the identified core commercial areas of both Port Elgin and Southampton. Identified next steps of this initiative include hosting a public information center anticipated in the coming month, preparation of a draft community planning permit bylaw, preparation of a draft official plan amendment, and additional stakeholder engagement. Initiative 6 is the nonprofit housing partnerships, which looks to provide a central focus on the creation of long-lasting relationships with nonprofit housing providers. It also prioritizes the development and implementation of streamlined processes and strategies to best maintain these partnerships while facilitating attainable and affordable housing in the community. This initiative is currently on track and approximately 56% complete, with anticipated completion by Q2 of 2026. Currently, staff are looking to advance a housing action strategy. The intent of this strategy is to focus on the key areas being policy, regulations, process, partnerships, and infrastructure. It would also provide an opportunity to consolidate previous housing-related work conducted and recommendations. So as for next steps, a request for proposal for identified work will need to be developed to implement such a strategy, anticipated to be developed and available for proponent selection Q1 of 2026. The completion of the housing action strategy will generally, in a larger part, result in the completion of this project. So Initiative 7 is the Property Repurpose Utilization Program to convert surplus and underutilized land to housing. This initiative looks to identify surplus and underutilized lands and buildings and establish new municipal policies and processes that support community developers and landowners in transforming existing properties and/or creating housing units through gentle intensification. So this initiative is currently on track and 40% complete, with anticipated completion by Q3 of 2026. Staff are presently advancing a community improvement plan framework amendment through the CIP that was updated in Initiative 2. So this review will examine how a property repurpose program or related incentives can be utilized and implemented. Completion of the community improvement plan update and inclusion of a property repurpose related incentive will represent the next milestone in advancing this initiative. So the last initiative is the incentive programming tools. This initiative aims to enhance and streamline the process for evaluating and applying for incentive programs designed to support housing development. This initiative is intended to support the financial analysis that's conducted through the Affordable Housing Community Improvement Plan update and to ensure that incentive programs are effective in the construction of housing units. This initiative is currently on track and approximately 53% complete, with anticipated completion by Q3 of 2026. This program provides financial support to Initiative 2, being the Community Improvement Plan update, and will aid in its further development as components of each initiative's milestones align. As previously noted, the town will bring forward a staff report in Q1 for council consideration and awareness, outlining recommended housing-related programs to be made available to residents. So to quickly summarize the reporting process, CMHC has formal reporting requirements that must be met in order for the town to continue receiving funding. Reporting typically requires the completion of multiple documents, providing updates on whether we meet milestones and project completion dates. So to date, the town has completed the semi-annual and first annual reporting requirements. The first annual report covered the period from December 6, 2024 to December 5th, 2025, and identified the following key information. The town is currently on pace to surpass the housing supply growth target of 1.90%, which is the average annual housing supply growth target without half funding. A total of 249 net new units were permitted in this period, including 74 single detached homes, 92 missing middle housing, which does include townhomes, duplexes, semi-detached, etc. 83 other multi-unit housing, which does include fourplexes and apartment units. And the second and third annual reports will be required on the anniversary of the agreement signing, being late Q4. I did also want to note that these were units that were permitted and created and does not include the development of other ongoing housing projects such as the Concession 10 or Blue Water Lands project. And to just quickly provide a brief update on those ongoing affordable housing projects. Concession 10 lands are progressing with the sewer infrastructure being installed and water to be installed in Q2. As for the Blue Water Lands project, the consultants have consulted with both the county and town staff on their proposal and are currently advancing the necessary application documents for submission to the county. They're also planning an open house that will likely take place in late spring to early summer. So that concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So there is a resolution that council received the Housing Accelerator Fund update report for information. Is there a mover and seconder? The Vice Deputy Mayor and Councillor Mayette. Discussion. The Vice Deputy Mayor, Councillor Grace. Help.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to, I think all of council received this note, and I'm not going to try and spill whole water over this because I think there's a lot of good stuff in here. But it came from a resident, just talked about the 3.2 million, and it appeared that, according to this resident, that we're spending a lot of money on consultants. We're updating the affordable CIP program. There's public meetings, which is great. The community permitting system bylaw, housing opportunity system study, nodes and corridor study, property repurpose program report study. I'm not sure it's a study or not, but there's 4 or 5 more studies. And I'm just wondering, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Kristen, the 3.2 million, Kristen, how much money have we spent to date of the 3.2 million, and I suppose the majority of the money has been spent on, I know there was the, through the toolkit for builders can come in and look at different floor plans, and I think they're ready for pickup now. I think they're being used, and I don't know what that costs, but how much have we spent to date of the 3.2 million? I'm just curious.
Thank you for the question, through you, Mayor. So as of current, through the reporting that we did indicate in December, I believe at this point we've only spent approximately in total and related to half, approximately 250,000.
CAO has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in response to the email that you received today too, I just wanted to explain the HALF program a little bit, in that the goal behind it is to create long-lasting policy framework that encourages housing. So when we applied to the program, the front end portion of that was to fund the studies and the pieces that Kristen's outlined tonight. By doing that work, that unlocks the remainder of the funding for us to do the development pieces. So what you'll start to see coming forward was why the reporting is so important that Kristen mentioned, is that's how we get the remainder. So I believe the breakdown out of the 3.2 million was roughly around 700,000 was being set aside for the 8 studies at the front end of this that would then unleash the rest of it in order to fund the projects.
That's part of my next, I was gonna, no, it's okay. I just was wondering about the cost for all of the studies, which is good to know. It's around 700. And that, so it leaves about 2.5 million. And could you just explain for the benefit of the public, not just this person here, but others are asking about the accelerator fund and how it's going to impact affordable housing potentially, where the remaining 2.5 million, and I'm sorry if the email was sent out today, I didn't get to what you're talking about. Could you just explain someone about the next 2.5 million and how that's going to be spent? And I guess it's implementing all of those policies, but it will have a direct impact on building affordable housing.
Thank you for the question, through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So I would also say, just in addition to that 700,000 that's been allocated for some of that study and project development work, there has also been an allocation of funding for the Blue Water Lands development. And there was also the concession 10 lands, which does approximately, I think, 900,000 that's been allocated for that, maybe more. So in that case, I believe there's a remaining 1.5 million approximately. And again, through the funding or the reporting that's done every year, we are reassessed. So there's the potential that that value could change. It could increase, it could decrease. And that's something we haven't heard back on yet. But at this time, we do have some flexibility with that funding. We are going to continue to monitor the spending, as we do have to spend it before the deadline of December 6th to 2028. So we're just going to continue to monitor it until then.
Just as a quick follow-up, and that's good news, but, you know, the Blue Water Lands, I think one of the things, I think it was $500,000, I believe, for playground and recreational type services. So what we're saying, to you, Mr. Mayor, is that we're okay to spend that money with the accelerator fund on recreation. Like if it's going to impact in a positive way, bringing them, like it was 140 affordable housing units going in there. So that's all part of it, that because we're doing what we're doing with 140 units, we're able to spend that money on development and use it towards rec. Is that?
CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the funds allocated for both those projects were more specifically related to the housing expansion. So for example, with the concession 10 property, it was for the sewer and water expansion. And the Blue Water Lands were for the pre-servicing studies and the work that needs to be done, like related to the official plan, those kind of things. So it's not necessarily for the recreational aspects.
And I just to put a fine point on that, because I received the same message today as you did. And the point is that using the Housing Accelerator Fund, we are going to be able to build upwards of 170 affordable housing units in the town of Saugeen Shores without costing the taxpayer of the town of Saugeen Shores $1. 170 affordable units. So that's the answer to the question, right? We're actually going to build stuff with the Housing Accelerator Fund, a fair bit of stuff. Councillor Grace and then Halpin.
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Counselor Halpin.
Thank you. My questions have been answered too. So my question was, and I told someone to ask this question, can this money be used for infrastructure? And so the short answer is yes, we used it for the infrastructure to get around the bottleneck we had of servicing at the 10th. And we're using it to make the plans and everything for the Blue Water lands, and it can be used for infrastructure for that if needed as well. Thank you.
Sounds right. Counselor Maya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Chris and I, looking at your reporting periods on the bottom line here, I see this is we're in Q1 2026. That's the green point we're in there right now. That's the reporting period. And I see the next one is Q1 2027. It almost makes me want to come back for that. But my question is, is this the same reporting periods that the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation requires, or do they require more frequent and I presume more detailed reporting on how you're spending their money in order to unlock the next portions?
And thank you for the question, through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So yeah, the CMHC basically does have a standardized process or outline as to how municipalities are to report on the funding. Obviously, we were accepted through the second round, so the first round of applicants have different dates than we do. And they are solely based on the date of the signing of the agreement. So in most instances, almost every municipality has different dates they have to meet, but roughly it's within the same periods that they do have to report within.
So it's sometime within that quarter that you have to make the report, but presumably the reports that they want are much more detailed and outline exactly how much is spent and then the results, as you pointed out, the number of affordable or the total number of units that have been produced because of these well thought out and articulated plans that have been put in place.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? Yeah, it's a good report. Appreciate the update on all those things. It's nice to hear sort of where we're at with some of these particular things like the community permit planning system stuff that we've been sort of talking about for a very long time. It's a huge and very complicated thing to do, and that's why it's taking us a long time. Housing Accelerator has allowed us to advance it, so now we are advancing it. To me, it's pretty wonky, but I think that's probably the most exciting thing out of all this because it is a true and very significant regulatory reduction. I love reducing regulations, and it's a regulatory reduction which will benefit everybody in the community, in particular folks looking to build affordable housing. So I think it's exciting to see that moving, and I appreciate you guys updating us. And also, it's nice to see in that reporting, that last slide there, how the town is on pace to surpass the targets that were that we agreed to as part of receiving this Housing Accelerator money. And we're exceeding them by a fair bit, I should think. And that's because of all the good work that you and our staff and this council and our community are doing. So anyway, it's a positive report and thank you for it. So you've heard the recommendation. It's moved and seconded. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to go into close to public to receive a legal update to discusses legal advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege on litigation or potential litigation, to discuss and provide direction or instructions to ongoing negotiations on behalf of the municipality. And the resolution is the council move into a closed public session in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001-2392E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And the items there are 10.1, disclosure of pecuniary interest, 10.2, adoption of the closed public meeting minutes and the closed public staff reports, and the report is on the February 2026 CCV legal update. So is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Mayat, seconded by Halpin. All in favor? Council will now move into a closed public session, and we will convene and closed at 9:15. Okay, I have a resolution here. The council arise from the closed public session and resume the regular meeting. Moved by Councillor Mayat, seconded by Councillor Stack. All in favor? That is carried. I will report that during the closed public session, council approved closed to public minutes and discussed matters and provided direction relative to advice subject to solicitor-client privilege from the town solicitor regarding the February 2026 CCV legal update. Okay, so now we're on to the consent agenda. There are 8 items on the consent agenda. Anybody want to vote on any of those on their own? If not, we'll just take the resolution that items 12.1 through 12.8 be approved and received for information. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Stack, seconded by Duhame. All right, so now we'll just work our way through them quickly here. First, 12.1, the Source Water Protection Service Agreement. Any comments, questions on that one? Don't see any. Then we'll move on to 12.2, the 2026 Roma delegation update. The Councillor Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just briefly state that it was a pleasure attending Roma on behalf of council. You and I, the mayor and I attended along with the CAO and Jill, the Director of Strategic Initiatives. I have the agenda right here. I'll go through it item by item if you don't mind. With a brief note on all the sessions I attended. If anybody would like to see the agenda, it's available right over here. It was a good session. It was a good opportunity to have the delegations, of course. The mayor had some 15, we had some 3. But it was also a good time to network with other municipalities, which is one of the main reasons you go there. Also a good chance to see the ministers and their delegates in face-to-face in the open sessions or the Bears pit. And we did all of that, and thanks for allowing us to do that.
Yep, agreed. It was a good conference. Is there anything else on that one? If not, we'll move on to 12.3, changes to the fire department establishing and regulatory bylaw. Any questions or comments on that one? Seeing none, then we will move on to 12.4, the Zonbeck Belgium Sister City Memorandum of Understanding. Any comments on that one? Councillor Helpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I just want to congratulate Mr. Willits for his work on that. And this May, I will be visiting Zonbeck, Belgium. I'm doing a trip of World War II sites with my brother-in-law. So thanks for your work on that, and I'll give you guys a report on it.
Yeah, we'll send you with some pins. Further comments? Councillor Mayat.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have seen the preliminary reports on this before, and the council was gratefully very supportive of it, and I expect that that's what we'll see again. The mayor asked me to be the point of contact along with Mr. Willits, and we, on that note, we had we convened a meeting at the museum a month or so ago. And we invited people from the Chamber of Commerce. We had people from the high school, a couple of high school teachers. We had the museum director. We had Chamber of Commerce, myself and John. And did I miss anybody? But we had certainly a coalition of the willing and the eager, I might say, and particularly eager were the museum people. They saw lots of possibilities for collaboration. The high school teachers were very enthusiastic about this. The one high school teacher is very big on teaching his kids about World War I, World War II, and those types of things. So he was very, very keen on where this could lead to. And really, it could lead, the possibilities are endless. It can lead to things like Councillor Halpin said, where individuals may want to take a trip, and because we're sister cities, you might want to go to that town where you may not otherwise go. Or same happens when people from Belgium, maybe they come to Canada, instead of just visiting the CN Tower in Niagara Falls, maybe they take a trip up to their sister city and visit our museum and see the exhibits and visit our town and maybe spend a little bit of money here. So there's unlimited potential for this, and there's not a great deal of money involved. There may be some promotional materials, maybe through the county and the library at some point in time, but I think it's a great initiative. And yes, congratulations to John on spearheading this. He's received tremendous support from all the way to the Legion of Canada and the what do you call it? The ambassador, the Canadian ambassador to Belgium is in support of this. And so I think it can only go good places. And if we approve this tonight, the memorandum will be forwarded off to Zonnebeck, and their council, similar to ours, will we'll go through their processes of commenting on and looking at that MOU. And if it comes back positive, then we'll arrange some kind of a ceremony. And being the 100th year of the Legion in Canada, it's a very appropriate time for that. Maybe we'll have something either before or very near to our Remembrance Day in November to commensurate this whole approach. So I appreciate everybody's support on this, and I look very forward to seeing it go great places.
Thank you. Any further comments on this one? I just briefly just echo the comments that have made. Thanks to Mr. Willits and to you, Dave, for your work on this on behalf of council and the municipality, and to our staff who've worked on it. I know Mark Powley was involved in putting this together as well. So, I mean, the town's already shown some commitment to working on this and structuring it and putting it together. And looking forward to hearing back from the folks in Belgium. And I anticipate it'll be a really positive thing for our communities, for our community for sure, to get to know the folks in Belgium and to talk about some of the history we share and to share some of our cultural connections going forward. So hopefully the folks in Zombeck find it acceptable and we can sign this memorandum of understanding and move forward on this. So thanks to everybody for this. Appreciate it. So we'll move on then to 12.5, which is the Bruce Area Solid Waste Recycling Municipal Services Corporation Business Case Study RFP. Comments from anybody on this? The Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Mr. Mayor, that the things are moving along really, really well right now with BOS. We had a really fine meeting last week, and we went with the lawyer. We also met with Fiona Hamilton from Brockton. Has been extremely helpful with helping us move forward with this process. And thank you, Kara and Jim Bunchitz and to Tammy Grove. It's been an interesting process. One of the requirements of with the new business agreement with Waste Management Organization is that we agree to incorporate as a municipal services corporation and under the Business Corporation Act. And so we brought in some help to help us with that process. Part of that process, you have to create a business plan for all 7 municipalities. That will be done by this organization where we've hired this KPMG. And again, through the working group, and Jim, thanks, Jim gone, but thanks so much, Jim, and staff passed it on to him. And so things are moving along well. It's a fair amount of money, but there were 5 bids. But the thing about it, this company's going to help us right through to incorporation in October, November, December. And by the end of the year, we'll be incorporated. We'll have a new lease agreement, updating that 1999 agreement, and create a board of directors, and away we go. So it was a really positive meeting last week. A lot of good things happened in that hour and a half, 2-hour meeting to pull everything together. So again, thank you, staff, and for all your help with this process.
Yeah, and thank you to you for your work on this. The Vice Deputy Mayor is now the chairman of Bruce Area Solid Waste Recycling, a job that I'm sure brings him lots of joy. And we thank him for taking it on for us and for all of your work and getting us to where we are, and looking forward to getting the rest of the way. If there's nothing further on that one, then we'll move on to 12.6, the Joint Bruce County 2026 Election Compliance Audit Committee. Any questions or comments on the Audit Committee? Seeing none, then we'll go on to 12.7, the lease agreement for the storage facility at 741 Market Street. Any questions on this one? Don't see any. So then we're on to 12.8, communications, 10 items of communication there for your perusal. Any comments on any of those? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like us to support the Aaron Eldersley motion on the new governance framework for municipal water and wastewater services. I thought their motion was reasonable, and it's could run into problems. I know that they ask for the change to be voluntary and not imposed upon a municipality, and I think that that's a good way forward.
Okay, it's moved by Councillor Grace, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that council support the resolution from Aaron Elsley, their motion 03-01-2026 on Water and Wastewater Public Corporations Act 2025. Are there any questions or comments from the members? Just agree with that position. This seems to be a matter of great interest to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Seems eager to advance these. I think, don't reject it offhand, but I do think it's something that municipalities should be able to choose to do rather than be forced to do. There seems to be, as I've seen lots of correspondence in the last little while about an unease in the municipal sector about the province's intentions around amalgamations, around these kinds of things, municipal service corporations, et cetera, et cetera. I guess this is, the message here is, the municipalities want to and need to be consulted in these changes. If these changes are going to be made, they should be allowed to make decisions for themselves. And really, the public needs, beyond the municipality, the public needs to have a say in these things. So these corporations are, the water and sewer system in Saugeen Shores is owned by the people of Saugeen Shores. If that asset, which is a major and tens of hundreds of millions of dollar asset, is just to be transferred to some different ownership structure, that's a matter that the people, even more than the council, need to have some say in. So anyway, support the resolution. If there's no further comments, questions or comments, I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Anything else from the correspondence? Councillor Davinsky.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I would like to move that we support the resolution that has come from the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, asking that Bill 9, which would create a standard municipal code of conduct, integrity commissioner inquiries, and so on, that would be consistent throughout the province, calling on the provincial government to get this bill passed sooner rather than later. And I think it's worth doing so and supporting. I would move that.
Moved by Councillor Davinsky, seconded by Councillor Jahame, that council support the resolution from the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville with respect to the Municipal Accountability Act. Is there any questions or comments from the members? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Further items from the correspondence, Councillor Mayette.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to bring attention to the motion here by the Bruce County Federation of Agriculture with regards to bears on the peninsula. I'm not going to raise a motion to support it, but I'd just like to raise the awareness that there's been changes proposed by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Parks to change the way that bears are managed on the peninsula. We get the odd bear roaming down here in Saugeen Shores, but not as many as they have up there. The topography up there lends itself better to denning and habitat for bears. And the decimation on the agricultural sector is fairly significant, and it's not decreasing. And the Federation of Agriculture and my good friend Chris Crossett, the president of the Bruce County Federation, has brought this up. And I'd like to just bring awareness to the municipality that bears, as much as they are neat to see, they are dangerous, and they do pose a threat to beekeepers, cattle raisers, and crop farms on the peninsula.
Yeah, thank you for that. Are there further items of correspondence that people wish to speak to? If not, then we'll move on. We have the resolution to adopt, that is moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. I'll ask all in favor. That is carried. So now we'll move on to bylaws, and there's 4 bylaws there. Anybody wish to vote on any of the bylaws independently? Seeing no request for that, then I'll read the resolution that bylaws 20-2026, 21-2026, 22-2026, and 23-2026 are hereby read, passed, and sealed this 23rd day of February 2026. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Davinsky, seconded by Stack. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. And not finally, the confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw 24-2026 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores is hereby read, passed, and sealed this 23rd day of February 2026. Mover and seconder, moved by Grace, seconded by Halpin. All in favor? That is carried. And finally, that this regular council meeting of February 23rd, 2026 hereby adjourns at 10:16 PM. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Stack, seconded by Halpin. All in favor? That is carried. Have a good night, everybody.